Signing it. Love, blessing, love to sa.neter universe. Hit it, you see it, you see it. Middle finger to all the fools who ain't got the testicular fortitude to walk in the shoes of sa.neter. You can't do better than sa.neter, no better. Middle finger to all the fools who ain't got the testicular fortitude to walk in the shoes of sa.neter. You can't do better than sa.neter. How dare some sissy try run at the mouth? Shut keyboard gangsters better run in the house. We're pointing you out. Name and shame the exposure. Salute sa.neter who keeps his composure for the people. Son spends his time running around getting that information. Worth hundreds of pounds or thousands of dead presidents. Gather around, contribute to the cause and stop being a clown. He's in a hood near you with a cannon to shoot it up. True warrior, his heart don't pump no fruit punch. Red, black and green for the information. I'm a fiend, so don't ever disrespect sa.neter, I beg you please. Humble yourself, give thanks and come in peace. We don't have no love for agents or police. Don't watch Fox News, CNN or BBC. sa.neter, Black News 1 or 2 is on repeat. Middle finger to all the fools who ain't got the testicular fortitude to walk in the shoes of sa.neter. You can't do better than sa.neter, no better. Middle finger to all the fools who ain't got the testicular fortitude to walk in the shoes of sa.neter. You can't do better than sa.neter, no better. Peace to the Black Power family. Peace to the Black Power family. We do it for the people. Yeah, yeah, yeah. sa.neter TV. Yeah. I'm tuned in to sa.neter. Subscribe to sa.neter. I was on the couch watching sa.neter. Peace to the natures, peace to the prophets. He brought them all together, he's the Don, king of knowledge. Learning information you cannot get from a college. Never knew a day it would be cool to be conscious. I was on the topic, loving the debate. Now we got the conferences to serve another plate, so you can get your food for thought and enjoy the pleasure. Red, black, and green, I'm on the way up to the lecture. It's all for the better, knowledge is the treasure. A legend to the game, the one and only sa.neter. We do it for the fam. sa.neter Studios, Black News on 2. Special shout out to the ASOK. The house of consciousness is all the same. We do it for the people. We do it for the people. We do it for the fam. sa.neter Studios, Black News on 2. Special shout out to the ASOK. The house of consciousness is all the same.
We do it for the people. sa.neter TV. We do it for the people, yeah. sa.neter TV.
In the news zone, yeah. It seems like everybody watch the House of Consciousness. Got them tuning in here in the States, they every conference. You got your holy book, your references and documents. Then hit your brother's side and get it cracking with the confidence. sa.neter TV, it don't get no more reality. It's helping us stay mindful of the struggle in totality. Humble yourself and let the commentary resonate. Living in these times, it's here sure to help you elevate.
Then I lose on. Hope the dialogue ain't too strong. Y'all know that we've been waiting too long.
And ever since I stepped into this paradigm, most of the time all I got is building on my mind.
On the black throne, where kings and queens come get their facts on. Just be prepared to have your mind blown. And ever since I stepped into this paradigm, most of the time all I got is freedom on my mind, for real.
Yeah, I know I'm waiting on my guests. So I'm hitting y'all with some music, man. That's all. Just hitting y'all with a couple of musics. Some old tracks that I remixed. And hitting y'all with some old stuff. Oh, man. Yeah, what's up, brother?
That's not the right link. When I joined, it says you're backstage and it says ended. And it gives the time that the previous one was.
I don't know why I keep doing that, because I'm giving you the link that I'm on. I don't know why I keep doing that crazy shit.
Could you post the link in the chat?
Remember you said you can't get in like that. That's why I was doing that.
I know, but I had somebody send it to me.
Okay, all right. It's in the chat right now. It's in the chat. Let's get it. Let's go.
Last time, so I don't know. I'm gonna
figure it out. Yeah, it's in the chat. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, we're gonna get it, y'all. Just relax. Just relax.
Rhythm, bang! Yeah. Well, it's King 9 London signing it. Love, blessing, love to sa.neter universe. Hit it, you see it. Middle finger to all the fools who ain't got the testicular fortitude to walk in the shoes of sa.neter. You can't do better than sa.neter, no better. Middle finger to all the fools who ain't got the testicular fortitude to walk in the shoes of sa.neter. You can't do better than sa.neter, no better. How dare some sissy try run at the mouth? Shut keyboard gangsters better run in the house. We're pointing you out, name and shame the exposure. Salute sa.neter who keeps his composure for the people. Son spends his time running around getting that information. Worth hundreds of pounds or thousands of dead presidents. Gather around, contribute to the cause and stop being a clown. He's in a hood near you with a cannon to shoot it up. True warrior, his heart don't pump no fruit punch. Red, black and green for the information. I'm a fiend, so don't ever disrespect sa.neter, I beg you please. Humble yourself, give thanks and come in peace. We don't have no love for agents or police. Don't watch Fox News, CNN or BBC. sa.neter, Black News 1 or 2 is on repeat. Middle finger to all the fools who ain't got the testicular fortitude to walk in the shoes of sa.neter. You can't do better than sa.neter, no better. Middle finger to all the fools who ain't got the testicular fortitude to walk in the shoes of sa.neter. You can't do better than sa.neter, no better.
All right. Yeah. Y'all already know what it is. Peace and black power to everybody out there, man. Y'all already know, man. We got God Energy back in the building for the double dose part 2. Make sure y'all check this out. God Energy presents Out of Africa. Genetic reality over theory. Let's get it in, brother. All right. I got another show at 9 o'clock. Oh, I want to get this in. It's only 6.
Okay.
Let's get it. Come on, man. Talk to me.
All right, so yeah. The reason why I did this too, I think it's important because we've been on the back end or the short end of the stick when the racial conversation when it comes to ethnic groups and race. You know, racial science and racist eugenics has put a bad taste in the air, bad vibe in the air. So I think we approach this topic from a place of weakness, from being beat up. So we have an apprehension about talking about these things. It's the same thing that blocks people from learning about Darwin and evolution to the extent that they should. Right, because of the racial trauma associated with the ad hominems calling us monkeys and apes about how we look. So when Darwin and evolution and science comes with that the human species is related to these animal groups, we get emotional again. That trauma comes back up. But I think it does us a disservice because it blocks our science literacy, and it also keeps us from studying the science that actually overturns those racial postulates that were found to be untrue. So we have to learn this stuff to figure out the details of how those racial postulates were untrue, and we could prove it scholastically.
All right, brother, I want to just say to you, don't ever be discouraged, and I know you're not. I know you're strong. When you have people coming back with feedback, sometimes people, not everybody, and I'm not saying the brothers do, but some people can be jealous of what you're doing. Some people want to do better than you. And there's always going to be somebody that's going to go against what you teach. Because everybody's not going to agree. So don't ever get discouraged on that. You're doing a great job. And without any further ado, I want to put your screen up on the screen.
Yeah. Try F5. Someone told me that F5 will put it in presentation mode. Once you get it to how you need it.
You said put it in F5?
Hit F5 on your keyboard.
Okay.
And that'll put it into presentation mode.
Hit it in F5.
Yeah, on your keyboard.
I'm hitting F5. What I hit? Shift F5?
Nah, it should just be F5. But if not, we're gonna rock out just like this.
All right. Unc told me to hit slideshow and then insert. Slideshow and then insert. New slide.
I don't know. Nah, see that? No. Nah, that creates a new slide. Oh.
Yeah, that's all that is.
All right, nah, we'll go. Yeah, insert does a new slide. We just gonna rock out just how it is.
Yeah, let's get it like that. Come on, let's go.
So right here, this is a review of what we explored in the first half, right? So I took you through A, B, C, and D haplogroups. And we can see up there the Jebel Arud findings in Morocco up top. That's from the Jebel Arud findings, right? The earliest hominin findings that they have. Then you see over in East Africa, the Khoisan type and the Dinka type representing the A haplogroup. And that picture was used in my slide not to represent the A3B2 haplogroup. Hold on, go back. Yeah, I used that Sudanese Dinka because the Dinka Sudanese were mentioned in that slide. So that's why I used that picture. That picture isn't to represent the whole A3B2 haplogroup, but it is meant to represent the Dinka Sudanese that was mentioned in the slide because that person is. So we also have the Pygmies. We have a picture of the Basal Eurasians. Up top in Europe in the blue, we have Kostanki. We also have King Billy up there representing the ancestral Western hunter-gatherers. So these are how these groups were described, right? Over in India, the ancient ancestral South Indian. We have the Hobinian types that were represented by the D haplogroup Admenese, Tian Yuan over in the brown in China, again represented by the D haplogroup and the Admenese. So I think this is important for us to have a recap of what we've already covered with the migrations of the A, B, C, and D haplogroups and how just from there, the entire globe is populated with melanated Africoid type peoples. Next slide. So we're going to pick back up with the E haplogroup. It's right after D. And we're going to talk about the African origins of the E haplogroup. Here's the distribution. You see the highest concentration is in places like the Horn of Africa and also parts of North Africa and Northwest Africa. Next slide. So this is a rare deep-rooting DO African Y chromosomal haplogroup and its implications for the expansions of modern humans out of Africa. So even in the title, it's relevant to what we're talking about here. So it says, considering both the Y chromosome phylogenetic structure incorporating the DO lineage that they had recently found and published evidence from modern humans outside Africa, the most favored model involves an origin of the DE lineage within Africa. Involves a model of an origin of the DE lineage within Africa, with DO and E remaining there. So this is the origin of the DE lineage, DO and E happening in Africa, right? And migrations out of the three lineages, the C, the D, and the FT. So those are the lineages that migrated out of Africa, while E, DO stayed in Africa. And these C, D, and FT now form the vast majority of non-African Y chromosomes. So the exit took place 50,300 to 81,000 years ago. And right there is a chart that was produced by Underhill and Cavisild in their phylogenetic study that also places the origin of the DE, the D, the E haplogroup in Africa. Next slide. So we're talking about the phylogenetic paper, new binary polymorphisms reshape and increase resolution of human Y chromosomal haplogroup tree. Next slide. So the E haplogroup is now defined by 18 mutations, right? And there are a total of 83 polymorphic sites that mark lineages within this clade, compared with a total of 30 internal mutations in 2002. So since 2002, they've added more mutations that they found. This makes haplogroup E by far the most mutationally diverse of all major Y chromosome clades. And that would explain why there's so much genetic diversity in Africa as well, right? Because the E haplogroup is the main haplogroup found dispersed all over Africa. This polymorphism, these polymorphisms define 56 distinct haplogroups, which can be found at high frequencies in Africa, at moderate frequencies in the Middle East and Southern Europe, and with occasional occurrences in Central and South Asia. Next slide. The most basal paragroup lineage of this clade, E paragroup, was found in a single Bantu-speaking male from South Africa. So haplogroups E1B1A7, E1B1A8 are widely distributed in Africa. On the other hand, E1B1A9 was detected in a single Gambian and chromosome E1B1A. Next slide. Right, so the most basal lineage of E was founded in African as well. So that also goes with the study that we just looked at from the DO haplogroup. So this is the work Pleistocene North African Genomes Linked Near Eastern and Sub-Saharan African Populations by Marika van der Loostrik and others. So this abstract says North Africa is a key region for understanding human history, but the genetic history of its people is largely unknown. We present genomic data from 7 15,000-year-old modern humans attributed to the Ibero-Mauritian culture from Morocco. We find a genetic affinity with early Holocene Near Easterners, best represented by Levantine Natufians, suggesting a pre-agricultural connection between Africa and the Near East. So before agriculture was formed, before the Natufians were formed, there was gene flow and migration of peoples from Africa into the Near East. And it says, we do not find evidence for gene flow from Paleolithic Europeans to late Pleistocene North Africans, meaning those Aurignacian peoples of the C haplogroup, basal mulattoes that I had coined them, they did not have introgression of their genes into North Africa. So those European genes of the Aurignacian C haplogroup did not come down into North Africa and mix. So it says the Tafaro individuals derive 1/3 of their ancestry from sub-Saharan Africans, best approximated by a mixture of genetic components preserved in present-day West and East Africans. Thus, we provide direct evidence for genetic interactions between modern humans across Africa and Eurasia in the Pleistocene. Next slide. So here is a model of the Ibero-Mauritian territory in northern Morocco. You can see over there is the Straits of Gibraltar that connect Africa and Spain. And indeed, they are called Ibero-Mauritians because their territory did extend into the Iberian Peninsula in Egypt, in Europe as well. So this is literally a Euro-African group, speaking in regards to territory. And you can see Tafarot is circled right there next to the Straits of Gibraltar. And also you see the Capsian territory right there in the turquoise on the right-hand side of the screen. So the relationship between Ibero-Mauritians and Capsians we're going to touch on in a few. Next slide. So it says, we find that all males with sufficient nuclear DNA preservation carry Y haplogroup E1B1B1A1. The haplogroup occurs most frequently in present-day North and East African populations. The closely related E1B1B1B haplogroup has been reported for Epipaleolithic Natufians and pre-Pottery Neolithic Levantines. And it says unsupervised genetic clustering also suggests a connection of Tafarot to the Near East. The three major components that comprise the Tafarot genomes are maximized in early Holocene Levantines, East African hunter-gatherer Hadza from north central Tanzania. Those are Click language speaking, Khoi speaking peoples in East Africa, and West Africans. In contrast, present day, so what they just described is that Tafarot genomes are a mix of East African hunter-gatherers, West African hunter-gatherers, and a little bit of Near Eastern genetics, right? So in contrast, present-day North Africans have smaller sub-Saharan African components with minimal Hadza-related contribution. So you also cannot make the argument that these modern North Africans that have more Caucasoid features, more Anatolian farmer features, people we call Arabs for short. You cannot say that they represent the ancestral peoples there, because this phylogenetic study shows that the ancestral peoples there were more Africoid, African. They contain more genetics associated with who we call sub-Saharan Africans. So the Ibero-Mauritians were more African than the modern day North Africans, who are Arabs. Next slide. So we find that Yoruba/Mende and Natufian are symmetrically related and two deeply divergent outgroups, right? So they're symmetrically related to two deep divergent outgroups of 2,000 years before present. They're talking about an ancient South African and Umbuti pygmy, right? So these are people of the A and B haplogroup, the basal clades of the human family, but also the basal clades of the African haplogroups. So it says the Yoruba and Mande are equally distant from those groups. So it says, since statistics are linear under admixture, we expect Tafarot not to be any closer to these outgroups than Yoruba or Natufian, right? So since the admixture is symmetrical genetically, when they tested Tafarot, they expected the Natufians and Yoruba and Tafarot to all have the same genetic distance from the basal African lineages, being South African and the Umbuti pygmies that I mentioned in the first part of this presentation. But it says, however, we find instead that Tafarot is significantly closer to both outgroups, South Africa and Umbuti, than any combination of Yoruba and Natufian. So this means, again, like I stated from the last slide, this shows genetically that the Tafarot Ibero-Mauritians of North Africa in Morocco were more African than modern day Arabian descended North Africans. And it's their closeness with these basal clades of A and B, represented by South African and Umbuti pygmies, that makes them closer to the basal Eurasian lineage. Next slide. So remember, when it says here projecting ancient ancestry in modern day Arabian and Iranians, it says we tried to disentangle between an ancient link and a bias to recent sub-Saharan African input in the signature by performing the haplotype-based clustering, and confirmed a still high proportion of basal Eurasian lineage / Ibero-Mauritian founding effect, right? So they tried to account for modern African movement into those genes, so to account for that Africanness. So they can only get the ancient African samples from these peoples. And what they find is that the Ibero-Mauritian specimens are currently the best proxy for basal Eurasian populations. Remember, the basal Eurasians was that initial expansion out of Africa who remained unmixed in southern Arabia, who did not mix with Neanderthals. And this says that Ibero-Mauritians are the best proxy for basal Eurasians. Why? Because the last slides just showed that the Ibero-Mauritians maintained a closeness still to the basal African haplogroups that the basal Eurasians also would have been related to. Next slide, please. So it says, we find that a mixture of Natufian and Yoruba reasonably fits the Tapharo gene pool. Adding gene flow from Paleolithic Europeans does not improve the model fit and provides an ancestry contribution estimate of 0. We thus find no evidence of gene flow from Paleolithic Europeans into Tapharo within the resolution of our data. So remember, they're talking about those Aurignacian peoples of the C haplogroup in Europe, the peoples whom in ancient and modern Britons were described as Australoid. Right, peoples from Australia, Melanesian type peoples, Tasmanian types. Those peoples did not come down into Tapharo and mix in. Next slide. So it says mitochondrial consensus of the Tapharo individuals belong to U6A and M1B haplogroups, which are mostly confined to present-day populations in North and East Africa. U6 and M1 have been proposed as markers for autochthonous Maghreb ancestry, which might have been originally introduced into this region by a back to Africa migration from West Asia. So it says here down where it says 25. Notably, the diversification of haplogroup U6 and M1 found for Tapharo is dated to 24,000 years before present, which is close in time to the earliest known appearance of the Ibero-Mauritians in Northwest Africa, right? From 25,845 to 25,270 calibrated years before present at Tamar Het. So what they're implying here is that when Eurasians first entered into Africa, that's when the Ibero-Mauritian culture started, right? From the amalgamation of those two groups. So dating when Eurasians come into North Africa also tells you when the Ibero-Mauritian culture first appeared. So those two events are synonymous. So we can also date when these West Eurasian genetics first entered into Africa, and it was 24,000 BCE. Around 25,000 and 24,000 BCE, or calibrated years before present, pardon me. Next slide, please. And again, here's a picture of the territory. This is also the same territory of the more ancient Aterian peoples. And the Aterians would have been the unmixed North African group that the Ibero-Mauritians were descended from. The Aterian peoples would have been even more of a close proxy, if not direct descendants of the basal Eurasians that migrated out of Africa. Next slide, please. So it says Kiphians were skilled hunters. Bones of many large savanna animals that were discovered in the same area suggest that they lived on the shores of a lake that was present during the Holocene wet phase, a period when the Sahara Desert was verdant and wet. This is the Green Sahara period. So the Kiphian people were tall, standing over 6 feet in height. A craniometric analysis by Sereno and others suggests that this early Holocene population was related to the late Pleistocene Ibero-Mauritians and early Holocene Capsians. All right, that's why I mentioned the Capsians, whose territory was right under the eastern portion of Ibero-Mauritian territory. So it says Ibero-Mauritians and of early Holocene Capsians of the Maghreb, as well as mid-Holocene Mecta groups. So these were the groups running around in the time of the Green Sahara. Next slide. And it says, based on dental evidence from Joel D. Irish of Liverpool, John Moores University, suggests sub-Saharan West African affinities for the Kiphians, these North Africans. So they have sub-Saharan and West African affinities, in turn suggesting that the common ancestors of West African and Proto-Bantu peoples may have originated in the southwestern region of the Sahara amid the Kiphian period at Gobi, and may have migrated southward from the Sahara into various parts of West Africa. Examples: Benin, Cameroon, Ghana, Nigeria, and Togo. So with that, this is showing that actually the Bantu expansion started from North Africa, right? And that the phenotypes you see in West Africa that we then carried to the Americas migrated down from the Sahara. So again, this is speaking against this idea that the Caucasoid, Arab, Iranian, Anatolian farmer type peoples that live in North Africa today have always been there, and their phenotypes and ethnic group have always been there. That is not true, right? Because it is the Bantu peoples and the West Africans who represent the populations that would have inhabited North Africa, like the Ibero-Maurusians, like the earlier Assyrians. So it says, as a result of desertification, the Green Sahara in 7000 BC from parts of southeast Nigeria and Cameroon, agricultural Proto-Bantu peoples began to migrate, and amid migration diverged into East Bantu peoples, examples people from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and West Bantu peoples, examples of Congo and Gabon, between 2500 and 1200 BCE. Next slide. So it says, lakeside cemeteries in the Sahara, 5,000 years of Holocene population and environmental change. Approximately 200 human burials were discovered on the edge of a paleo lake in Nigeria that provided a uniquely preserved record of human occupation in the Saharan during the Holocene, 8,000 BCE to present, called Gobi. This suite of closely spaced sites chronicles the rapid pace of biosocial change in the Southern Sahara in response to severe climatic fluctuation. Next slide. So it says craniometric data from 7 human groups were subjected to principal components analysis, which allies the early Holocene population at Gobi with mid-Holocene mectoids from Mali. So the population at Gobi in Nigeria was the same as the mectoid population from Mali and Mauritania, and with late Pleistocene Ibero-Maurusians and early Holocene Capsians. So these peoples all look like each other. And it says the striking similarity between these 7 human populations confirms previous suggestions regarding their affinity, and is particularly significant given their temporal range, late Pleistocene to mid-Holocene, right? So this is around 24,000 BCE to the Natufian era, right? So 24,000 BCE to around 8,000 BCE, and trans-Saharan region distribution across the Maghreb to Southern Sahara, right? So they mentioned Mauritania all the way down to the Sahel in Nigeria and Mali. Next slide. And here is a reconstruction of the Gobi peoples, forensic reconstruction from the University of Chicago and Project Exploration. So this is what the North Africans would have looked like. These Capsians, these mectoids, these Ibero-Maurusians, these people from Gobi, right? This is what they would have looked like, the ancestors of the Natufians, right? And often this has been regarded as, quote unquote, the Mediterranean race. So when they use terms like this, it's very ambiguous. And just like I cited from Vernuka Rashidi in the first part of this presentation, terms like the Mediterranean race is what? A euphemism for Black people. Next slide. And here's some artifacts left by the Mediterranean race, right? So at the top is a Carthaginian coin that dates from the time of Hannibal. And it has been speculated that that right there might be a depiction of Hannibal. It's the coin at the top with the greenish hue and an elephant on the side. Elephants famously associated with Hannibal, him marching over the Alps with these elephants. The coin underneath is definitely a Lesbos coin. Ankh paid very close attention, and he did some research on the image that I shown, and it was rambunctious because not all of those coins were Lesbos coins, but a portion of those coins were Lesbos coins. And I would use that image in connection with this Mediterranean race slide, because the rest of those coins still represent populations around the Mediterranean, showing that this quote unquote Mediterranean race is associated with Black or Africoid or melanated, whatever term you prefer, are associated with these peoples. And the images in the rectangles that are on the left-hand side, those are images from Phoenician Spain, right? So we've covered, and the Phoenicians lived on the east side of the Mediterranean, and their colony in Spain on the west side of the Mediterranean is still showing these phenotypes. Carthage is on the lower portion of the Mediterranean, still showing these features. Greece is in the upper middle portion of the Mediterranean, still showing these features. So from every corner of the Mediterranean, we have artifacts, primary evidence, the numismatic evidence, that the Mediterranean race, at least a portion of them, was represented by people with Africoid or Black phenotypes. Next slide. And again, repeating what I just said, it says in ancient Sumer, we can find no physical difference between the crania of the Eurafrican and Mediterranean referred to in the statements and the crania of the African and Asiatic Blacks of today. Going down, it says, fortunately, we are in position to form our own conclusions. And, you know, he goes on to say that those terms are euphemisms for Black people. Next slide. So this is the territory explained, and this is the territory that was held by the Proto-Afro-Asiatic peoples, right? So on that left-hand side is the exact area that was described in the papers, where we talked about the relationship between the Capsians, the Ibero-Maurutians, the Gobi people, the Mectoids, and more, right? So it is this North African Proto-Afro-Asiatic group that then gives rise to the Berber-speaking peoples, then gives rise to the Proto-Chadic-speaking peoples, Proto-Semitic-speaking peoples, Proto-Beja-speaking peoples, Proto-Cushitic-speaking peoples, right? So when we talk about how the Nubians, the Cushites, were of the same genetic lineage, phenotypic lineage as the Egyptians, it is this common North African ancestry that unites them. But not just that. It was a large group like this moving from South Africa upwards that also contributed to the genetics, population, and culture that we find in the Nile Valley. It is also Nilo-Saharans, as well as these Afro-Asiatics that form the culture we see in the Nile Valley. So yes, I am right here identifying this North African large superfamily of Africans that contributed to Kemet, but there was an equally large South African superfamily moving from the Lake Victoria region down the Nile that mixed with this group right here. And you can see certain cultural features that came from these North Africans and certain cultural features that came from the South. Next slide, please. This was Transition to Modernity, Essays on Power, Wealth, and Belief. It says, given the modern distribution of Semitic languages over the area in question, which belong to the larger Afro-Asiatic family, it seems appropriate to suggest that these first farmers of the Levant and their Mesolithic predecessors, including the Natufian culture, were speaking a Proto-Afro-Asiatic language. So the linguistic evidence also shows this movement of peoples from North Africa into the Levant. And these peoples being the first farmers is going to be important in just a second. Next slide, please. So not only the linguistic evidence, the craniometric analysis have suggested an affinity between the Natufians and populations of North or Sub-Saharan Africa. And you see why it says North or Sub-Saharan Africa? Because like I just demonstrated from the studies, that the North African is synonymous with the Sub-Saharan African, and that the Sub-Saharan African represents who the North African originally was. So it says, a result that finds some support from Y chromosome analysis, right? Which shows that the Natufians and successor Levantine Neolithic populations carried haplogroup E, a likely ultimate African origins, which has not yet been detected in other ancient males from West Asia. So the linguistic evidence, like I just stated, shows this movement. The craniometric evidence shows this relationship and movement. And the genetic evidence shows this relationship and movement. And it's the comparing of the sciences that give us these conclusions. And that's from Genomic Insights into the Origin of Farming in the Ancient Near East. Next slide, please. This is from Genetics and History. And well, hold on, we skipped a few. Yeah, craniometrics. Oh, okay, keep going. Yeah, that came out of place a little bit. So it says genetics in Egypt, history, interpreting geographic patterns of Y chromosome variation. The Mushabi culture in the Levant might have been created by a Mesolithic or Epipaleolithic population from the Nile Valley and the Ibero-Maurusians in the Maghreb, as well as suggested by Bosch and others. So this shows this Northeast African relation and migration from North Africa through East Africa into the Levant. Next slide, please. So here is this Natufian ancestry, right? Here's a map of the Natufian ancestry, and you can see the largest portion of Natufian ancestry is in Arabia, which is the same distribution as the Baso-Eurasian lineage. So the highest populations that have the highest Natufian ancestry also have the highest Baso-Eurasian ancestry. And you can see actually in Arabia, the transition from South Arabia, that's exactly the Baso-Eurasian territory. Once you leave Baso-Eurasian territory, the amount of Natufian ancestry immediately changes as well. So you can see a correlation between Natufian ancestry percentages and Baso-Eurasian territory. So I think that is a really cool correlation between the Natufians and their Baso-Eurasian ancestors. Next slide. So it says the questionable contribution of Neolithic and Bronze Age to European cranial form. It is a further surprise that the Epipaleolithic Natufian of Israel, from whom the Neolithic realm was assumed to arise, has a clear link to sub-Saharan Africa. So not only were these Ibero-Maurusians aligned with the basal lineages of Africa, they're mixed descendants of the Natufians still you can clearly see have a link to sub-Saharan Africa. Interestingly enough, however, the small Natufian sample falls between the Niger-Congo group and other samples used. This placement suggests that there may have been a sub-Saharan African element in the makeup of the Natufians, which we know there definitely was. Next slide. So right here, you can see Natufians right next to Niger-Congo, and on the other side, it says prehistoric and recent Northeast Africa, right? So the Black population of Northeast Africa, the Natufians and Niger-Congo peoples cluster nicely together, showing their affinities and their closeness in the Black family. And next slide, please. In Hot Pursuit of Language, in Prehistory, Essays on the Four Fields of Anthropology. This paper makes an additional inference, since there is archaeological and physical anthropological reason to believe that the Natufians were related to modern Semitic-speaking peoples of the Levant. So these peoples are definitely the descendants of the modern speakers of the Levant, peoples of the Levant. They were the ancestors of the Canaanites, the Amorites. They were the ancestors of the people of the Kingdom of Israel, the people of the Kingdom of Judah, right? So these would have been their African descended ancestors. So there is no Shemitic lineage that Shem came about in the Middle East, in the Levant, and has no connection to Africa. The early peoples of the Levant were from Africa. The earliest Semitic speakers were from Africa. The Semitic language itself is from Africa. So this disproves completely the Ham, Shem, and Japheth theory. This also destroys the concept that the ancestors of Israel formed and were always in the Middle East or the Levant, or even started in in Mesopotamia. Not true at all. Next slide, please. So this is the article published in Nature, Whole Genome Ancestry of an Old Kingdom Egyptian, which we had talked about with Brother Reggie in response to Chief X. So it says, we sequence two double coverage whole genome from an old male Egyptian excavated at Nuarat, radiocarbon dated to 2855 to 2570 calibrated BCE. He lived a few centuries after the Egyptian unification. Next slide. So it said the body was interned in a ceramic pot with a rock-cut tomb, potentially contributed to the DNA preservation. Those rock-cut tombs, those rock-cut sepulchres, side note, were also cited by Dravidian historians, archaeologists, that shows a clear link and a migration from the Nile Valley into India. And those rock-cut sepulchres along the travel path is one of the pieces of archaeological evidence that was used by archaeologists like K.P. Ardvanan. So it says, most of his genome is best represented by North African Neolithic ancestry. So we just extensively went through who those North African Neolithic peoples were. And we saw the recreation of the peoples at Gobi who looked like the Kithians, who looked like the Mekdoids, who looked like the Ibero-Marusians, who looked like, you know what I mean? So we see who those North African Neolithic peoples were. Next slide. So it says, yet approximately 20% of his genetic ancestry can be traced to genomes representing the Eastern Fertile Crescent, including Mesopotamia and surrounding regions. The genetic affinity is similar to ancestry appearing in Anatolia and the Levant during the Neolithic and Bronze Age. So we also just went through who those people were that contained the 20%. They were still Africoid looking peoples. Those Natufians that comprise 20%, the non-African 20%, they were still Africoid, right? The craniometrics show that they chart close to Niger-Congo peoples. The same Niger-Congo populations that the North Africans of Gobi plot with, right? So his North African ancestry and his 20% Fertile Crescent ancestry both lead back genetically and craniologically and morphologically to Africa, North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africans. So this is how we make this unambiguous. Next slide. Estimates of biological affinity based on dental morphological features and cranial measurements parallel the genomic results. So again, you have the craniometrics, the osteological analysis, the measurements of the bones mixed with the genetic evidence to give us a clear picture. They always go hand in hand. Next slide. The mitochondrial DNA haplogroup N1A1B2 and Y chromosome haplogroup E1B1B1B2B haplogroups of Narwhal individuals are most common in present-day North African and West Asian groups. So that E1B1B1B2B is interesting because, next slide. If you remember from Pleistocene North African Genomes by Marika van der Loosdrix, it says we find that all males with sufficient nuclear DNA preservation carry Y haplogroup E1B1B1A1, talking about the Taphorot Ibero-Marusians. So that A1 at the end indicates that it's older than any B that's going to come in place of it. And we see that the Natufians, right, the closely related haplogroup has been found in Epipaleolithic Natufians. That haplogroup is E1B1B1B, which comes after the E1B1B1A1 of the Ibero-Marusians, showing that the Natufian, or for short, M123 haplogroup is downstream, showing that they descended from those Ibero-Marusians. And the fact that the Nara individual had E1B1B12B shows that they are even more downstream from the Natufians, showing a descendancy from Ibero-Marusian to Natufian to the Narwhal Egyptian individual. Next slide. So this is, again, genetics, Egypt, and history interpreting geographic patterns of Y chromosome variation. It's important to consider the issue of the original frequencies and origins of the variants in Egypt and other parts of Africa, as well as the adjacent regions. This is specifically important given the ongoing tendency in some disciplines to label the Nile Valley as Middle Eastern, speaking against what Chief X was saying, speaking exactly against what Chief X was saying, in a fashion that effectively suggests that Egypt has no African context, like he tried to imply, and that also hides a biocultural Africanity in pre-Islamic times. Weren't we talking about that exact same time period? So it's like the authors of this genetic study knew some fool was going to come and make the type of claims Chief X made. And in this one excerpt right here, dismantled all the claims he made about Egypt. Next slide. Continuing on, it says the label Arabic for haplotype 5. So this genetic study is talking about the haplotypes. So it says the label Arabic for haplotype 5 is therefore misleading. It is misleading to label haplotype 5 as Near Eastern. In fact, this variant has been called African by Lacote 1993, Lacote 1996, and Berberian by Lacote 2001. So even in this genetic study right here, it's advocating for the blackness, for the Africanness of Egypt, where some of us try to act like, oh, it's ambiguous and the race, but it was a thing back then. Phenotypes were a thing back then. Genetic variants and distributions and genetic drift and separations of populations based off of phenotypes and genetics was a thing. Next slide, please. And continuing on with that article, the genetic data, specifically the M35 subclade affiliated with haplotype 5 in Africa that we were just talking about, can be related to the spatial range of much of the Afro-Asiatic linguistic phylum. So that haplotype also correlates with the entire linguistic phylum of Afro-Asiatic, which we just showed was carried by those North Africans like Ibero-Mauritians, Capsians, Kiphians, Mectoids, and others, right? So it says only one member, Semitic, is found in the Near East, right? And we know that the Semitic migrated out of Africa, out from amongst its other African brethren, and became popular in Asia. That's why it's called Afro-Asiatic. Next slide. It says the widespread distribution of the PN2 clade in the major language phyla of Africa. Its existence in the Levant. So this is the PN2 clade of the E haplogroup, right? It's associated with a major language phyla of Africa. So this is an African subclade associated with African language phyla. But it exists in the Levantine Iraq. That's the Fertile Crescent, right? And in the Aegean. So these Semitic speakers, Afro-Asiatic speakers carrying the African E haplogroup migrated into the Levant and Iraq, migrated into the Aegean. That's Greece, right? So we can see why the Minoans were depicted with the pigmentation that they were depicted with. Next slide, please. So could this be why Hercules was depicted as a black man, right? Not just in the Roman painting, but 500 years before that, on this vase here is a depiction of Hercules wrestling the Nemean lion, right? So you can't say that the blackness of Hercules was just maybe a pottery ottery. That was the Attic black style, right? Because they used the Attic black figures in Greek pottery. That's what that's called. But the Attic black figures we can now clearly see is meant to represent Black people, black-skinned people. How can we even further that? Because when you look at the pottery, there is clearly two different colors of people there. So you can't say that the Attic black figurines was just a style or a pottery oddity, because they are clearly showing two different colored peoples. And when you look closely, the hair of the white individual is different than the hair of Hercules wrestling the Nemean lion. So they are clearly acknowledging two different racial types, ethnic types, whatever you want to label it. They are representing two different types in Greece. Hercules is the melanated individual. Then 520 odd years later in Rome, you have this painting of Hercules and Telephus. Again, them fully acknowledging multiple racial types there and skin tones there. Hercules being the black man with the X over his rear posterior. And remember again, the A3 2B haplogroup was found in the Aegean on the island of Lesbos. So the A3 2B haplogroup brought African genes and phenotypes into Greece, and the E haplogroup also brought African phenotypes and genes into Greece. So Greece was well blackenized. Next slide, please. Thank you, Sa. So going back to the whole genomic ancestry of the Old Kingdom Egyptian, it says, although acknowledging known limitations in predicting phenotypic traits in understudied populations, so it's only hard to predict phenotypic traits in understudied populations. It's not hard in well-studied populations. So the Nuara individual is predicted to have had brown eyes, brown hair, and skin pigmentation ranging from dark to black. So I also don't think we should be squeamish about the term black when in this scientific article published in the Journal of Nature, whole genomic ancestry of an Old Kingdom Egyptian, they are still using the term black to refer to the skin color of this individual. So terms like black, terms like African are not outdated. They're not outdated. It's not a remnant from the past, from racist eugenics of the past. They are still saying the term black in association with skin tone and pigmentation. Y'all need to stop being sensitive about it and tender about this topic. Next slide, please. So when we get into, right, the origins of light skin and the pigmentation of skin and how these different, what we now call racial groups, right, came about, the story is not quite Yaqub. Right? Then this is what everyone is afraid of looking like when we're talking about this. They don't want to look like Malachi York, yo, and be pseudo, yo. So we shy away from things, right? And the story is not quite Yaqub, and we're not going to present some Yaqub philosophy, but we are going to dig into the reality of how this happened and see if there may be anything that correlates. That's for others to do to try to validate their Yaqub story. So any correlation between the Yaqub story and how this actually happened is a happenstance. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about the evolution of human skin color. White skin is really under 10,000 years old with a question mark, yet racism is something terrible and new under 7,000 years ago. So we're going to talk about the SLC genes and see why these dates and figures are being stated. 10,000 years old, that's not old at all. 7,000 years ago, that's not old at all. Next slide, please. So it says the earliest known individual with genetic mutation associated with blonde hair in modern Europeans, only blonde hair, is an ancient North Eurasian female dating to around 16,000 BCE or around 18,000 years ago from the Afonatova Gora site in Siberia. It has been suggested that their mythology may have included a narrative found in both Indo-European, which is later, and some Native American fables, which is later, in which a dog guards the path to the afterlife. So they're suggesting that this may be a common ancestor to some later Indo-Europeans and also some later Native Americans, which the migration pattern of the C haplogroup does confirm these things. So we're going to show how this woman had just blonde hair because that was the only SLC mutation that was around at that time. And this woman was found to have blonde hair because she did not have white skin. So this is the beginning process in the story of the lightening of the various phenotypes. It didn't all happen at once. And at this point in time, only the lightening of the hair was happening. So genomic studies also indicate that the ancient North Eurasian component was introduced to Western Europe by people related to the Yamnaya culture long after the Paleolithic. So they are corroborating what I'm saying is that these peoples with these genetics for pale hair, light hair, and then later pale skin, those genetics were introduced by the Yamnaya culture long after the Paleolithic. The female up top from 16,000 BCE that was discovered with blonde hair, that is during the Paleolithic. So those genes with blonde hair was not in Western Europe at this time. And it says it is reported in modern day Europeans 7 to 25%, but not of Europeans before the Bronze Age. So that ancient North Eurasian component that brings in the pale skin and the blonde hair was not present before the Bronze Age. That's very recent. The Bronze Age is 5,000, 6,000 BCE. Those genes were not present in Europe before the Bronze Age. That's crazy. Kemet started in the Bronze Age. Sumer started in the Bronze Age, giving you a temporal range for when people show up, when genes show up. So it says additional ancient North Eurasian ancestry is found in European populations through Paleolithic interactions with Eastern hunter-gatherers. Those Eastern hunter-gatherers would have been Black people, which resulted in populations such as Scandinavian hunter-gatherers. Next slide, please. So it says, looking at genomes from different populations all over Africa, researchers found the genetic variants responsible for skin pigmentation, namely SLC24A5, MFSD12, which is responsible for the lightening of skin in East Asians, DDB1, TMEM138, OCA2, and HERC2 genetics. Geneticist Sarah Tishkoff was the senior author on the UPenn study. So these are some of the genes associated with skin pigmentation. And according to Dr. Tishkoff, it is possible that there was a single African source population, like the one that migrated out of Africa, I'm putting in parentheses, source population that contained the genetic variants associated with both light and dark skin. And the variants associated with dark pigmentation were maintained only in South Asians and Australo-Malaysians and lost in other Eurasians due to natural selection. So again, she's talking about skin pigmentation, talking about Eurasians, and she mentions Australo-Melanesians. When we've been talking about Europeans, Paleolithic Europeans, first European populations, what group of peoples have constantly been mentioned? Australians and Melanesians. Even Dr. Tishkoff is saying it, and we know we're accepting Dr. Tishkoff and her research with the SLC genes. Even Dr. Tishkoff, when speaking about early Eurasians, mentions the Australo-Melanesians. So it is an established fact. From this slide on forward, I need everyone in here to acknowledge that the early Europeans, the Paleolithic Europeans, the Aurignacian Europeans were of a group similar to Australians and Melanesians. It's been stated and repeated over and over again. Next slide, please. So the genes that are primarily responsible for the pale skin of Europeans are SLC24A5 and SLC45A2. So the 24A5 gene regulates calcium in melanocytes and is a major factor in light skin pigmentation. The 45A2 gene, the depigmenting allele, F347 on the RS16891982 polymorphism in this gene is a second important factor in skin lightening in West Eurasians. Another gene, HERC2 or OCA2, causes blue eyes and it contributes to light skin color and blonde hair. And this was the gene mutation that was seen forming in the Paleolithic female who had blonde hair. So this was before the mutation of SLC24A5 and SLC45A2. Next slide, please. So what gets left out of the conversation is this is a map showing the rise of agriculture in the Fertile Crescent. Now remember, it was these peoples who were the first agriculturalists. So what gets left out in this conversation of skin pigmentation is agriculture is actually the starting catalyst for skin lightening and pigmentation. And a lower protein diet, hunter-gatherers, right, had more of a high protein diet because they were hunting and then gathering. You gather at lower portions. The proteins form most of the diet. So when you switch from the hunter-gatherer high protein diet to the agricultural diet, you don't get the proteins that you need for vitamin D production. So the first step happens with switching from a protein-rich diet to a grain-rich diet, reducing the proteins you need for vitamin D production. When that happens, next slide, please. The skin wants to compensate by absorbing vitamin D from the sun. But if you have too much melanin in your skin, that blocks the radiation, that blocks the skin's ability to absorb the vitamin D. Next slide, please. So when you have a low protein diet or an agriculture-based diet, and you move to those radiation zones, right, those low UV radiation zones, your skin wants to compensate and it develops pale skin to let more UV rays through past that melanin that acts as sunscreen. But if you maintain a fish diet, look over in the upper left-hand corner. If you maintain a fish diet like the Inuit peoples who had lived in that region for tens of thousands of years, they maintained their melanin because the vitamin D from the protein is sufficient enough, so their skin doesn't need to depigment. Also, when we look at the temporal range, the first modern humans were in Europe since around 45,000 BCE. And it is only up until around 10,000 years ago that they start to lighten up. So these peoples that were in Paleolithic Europe were able to maintain their skin color being dark for a very long time, even though they lived in low UV radiation zones, because it is not low radiation and UV that causes light skin color. It is the lack of protein that your body produces from a low protein diet, the low protein and low vitamin D. Then when you move into those low radiation zones, your skin becomes lighter. But it is not from living in low radiation zones again, because Paleolithic Europeans lived in Europe for 30,000 years and still maintained their dark skin color. And it is not because they lived in Europe that their skin turned white. It was the introduction of an agricultural diet. Next slide. So in this publication on Science, it says how Europeans evolved white skin. Ancient DNA from skeletons show dramatic natural selection in skin color and height in many Europeans. Next slide, please. So it says, first, the scientists confirmed an early report that the hunter-gatherers in Europe could not digest the sugars in milk 8,000 years ago. And these would have been the still melanated hunter-gatherers, those basal mulattoes, as I coined. They also noted an interesting twist. The first farmers also couldn't digest milk because those first farmers were also still melanated Black peoples, Africoid descended peoples. The farmers who came from the Near East about 7,800 years ago, that's 5,800 BCE, by the way, ago, and the Yamnaya pastoralists who came from the steppes 4,800 years ago, that's 2,800 BCE, lacked the version of the LCT gene that allows adults to digest sugars in milk. So even at that time, these people were still lactose intolerant. It wasn't until 4,300 years ago, that's 2,300 BCE, that lactose tolerance swept through Europe. So if they're building the model showing the correlation of lactose intolerance to non-Indo-European, non-blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white-skinned peoples. Lactose intolerance is associated with melanated individuals. That's why they are starting here, because they're also implying that when it was until 4,300 years ago that lactose tolerance swept through Europe, they're also implying this is when light-skinned, light-haired individuals swept through Europe in 2,300 BCE. In that temporal range. Next slide, please. When it comes to skin color, the team found a patchwork of evolution in different places and 3 separate genes that produce light skin, telling a complex story for how European skin evolved to be much lighter during the past 8,000 years. So during the past 8,000 years is when European skin became much lighter. It's not even during the Ibero-Mauritian time, right, of 25,000 BCE. Light skin wasn't even around back then during the Ibero-Mauritians. And the Ibero-Mauritians were mixed with West Asians. So at that time, the West Asians were not light skin either. So you can't say that light skin lightened up North Africans. Not at all. Because even though the Ibero-Mauritian North Africans were descended from Eurasian type peoples in the Levant, that was before light skin even developed. So there was no lightening of skin just because Eurasians moved into North Africa and mixed in at that time. So it says the modern humans who came out of Africa to originally settle Europe about 40,000 years ago are presumed to have had dark skin. Those are those peoples that were carving the Statopik man. Those were those peoples that were carving those early Venus statues. They did have dark skin. They were black people. You could tell that those early Arygnasian Paleolithic Europeans were dark-skinned black peoples who resembled Australoids, just like ancient and modern Britain said, multiple other anthropologists, and Dr. Tishkoff herself said. Right? So it says, and the new data confirms that about 8,500 years ago, early hunter-gatherers in Spain, Luxembourg, and Hungary also still had dark skin. They lacked versions of the two genes SLC24A5 and SLC45A2 that led to depigmentation and therefore pale skin. So even at 8,500 years ago, the hunter-gatherer groups from Spain, Luxembourg, and Hungary were still dark skinned. We're still dark skinned. Next slide.
Yo, you know what? You hear me?
Yeah, what's good, Sa?
You could easily name this video, this show, Scientific Facts versus God.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Versus
Because
God. Ain't no way around, bro.
No.
You
Yes, all of this is happening through natural processes.
No nothing is around right now.
No, not at all. Not at all. There's no Shem around. There was no Adam, no Isaac, no Ishmael, no Cain, no Lot, no Noah.
No Kemet.
No. Even at this time, Kemet wasn't around.
Right. That's what I'm saying. No Kemet.
No Kemet. This is pre-Kemet. A lot of the history.
All of this is man-made. Everything is man-made, man. That's what I'm trying to tell apostle and the religious people.
Yes. These things are man-made, and they keep you away from the scientific facts that this reveals. Right. So here's a breakdown, a chronology, right? In Europe, 50,000 to 10,000 years ago, they were still all dark-skinned. So that 50,000 to 10,000 years is the Arygnasian period. It is the Statopicman period. Those early Paleolithic Europeans were all dark-skinned, just like the entirety of my first presentation said. If you didn't see the first part of this presentation, please go back and check it out so you can get the full context. So 8,000 years ago, 92% were still dark in Europe. 8,000 years ago, that's 6,000 BCE, by the way, because if it's 8,000 years ago, you subtract the 2,000 of our modern time, because we're in the year 2026. So subtract 2,000 years from that 8,000 number, and you get 6,000. That's the BC. So 6,000 BC, 92% of Europe was still dark. Right? 4,000 years ago in 2000 BC, 50% was light and 50% was still dark. The pyramids were built already. So by the time the pyramids were built, done, and constructed and were 1,000 years old, only half of Europe was light and half of Europe was still black. If the ancient peoples of Egypt were to sail to Britain, which they did to mine tin, they would have ran into black people there. That's important to know. That these black Egyptians, when they went to mine tin in Britain, they still would have been running into black Britons there. 50% dark and 50% light at 2000 BCE. And then in the Common Era, we know it's near 100% white. And the East Asian figures are also on the right. 50,000 to 10,000, they're still all dark. 7,000 to 500 years ago, lightning begins. Right? So that's 5,500 BCE, lightning begins in Asia. This is a very youthful and young population group. Next slide. So it says, but in the far north, where low light levels would favor pale skin, the team found a different picture in hunter-gatherers. 7 people from 7,700 years ago, that's 5,700 BCE, Motala archaeological site in southern Sweden had both light skin gene variants, SLC24A5 and SLC45A2. They also had a third gene, HERC2 or the OCA2, which causes blue eyes and may also contribute to light skin and blonde hair. Thus, ancient hunter-gatherers of the far north were already pale and blue-eyed by 5,700 BC, but those of Central and Southern Europe had dark skin. So even at 5,700 BCE, the Europeans of Central and Southern Europe still had dark skin. Next slide. So 6000 BC, the lightning begins. And before that, for the entirety of human history, humans have been around for 300,000 years. The Jebel Arud findings date to 300,000 years. Lightening of the skin happened in 6000 BC, meaning the human family, the Homo sapien population had been around for 292,000 years before our skin began to be light. Let me say that one more time. The human Homo sapien species had been around for 292,000 years before our skin began to be light. And that's before the skin began to be light. That's something to say, family. So when you talk about the age of these groups of people, the age of non-Black peoples, it is not being Black supremacist. It is not being racist. It is not being like Malachi Z. York when you say that white people are less than 8,000 years old. And these are white geneticists saying this, letting this out, that their ethnic group, their group of Indo-Europeans, blonde-haired, blue-eyed peoples are only 8,000 years old, family. You are not being racist when you say that. You are being scientifically accurate. Next slide, please. Then the first farmers from the Near East arrived in Europe. So this is those farmers, right, where that lifestyle of agriculture leads to a lack of vitamin D production. They carried both genes for light skin. Of course they would. This was the ancestral population that was forming the light skin. As they interbred with the indigenous hunter-gatherers, who would have been Black, one of their light skin genes swept through Europe, so that Central and Southern Europeans also began to have lighter skin. The other gene variant, SLC45A2, was at low levels until about 3,800 BCE, or 5,800 years ago, when it swept up to high frequencies. Next slide, please. So it says the genetic origin of Indo-Europeans, right? So it's talking about the ancestral group, the Caucasus Lower Volga people who form, from whom Yamnaya ancestors formed around 4,000 BC. And remember, it is these Yamnaya who introduced those ancient North Eurasian genes, or the SLC mutations, into Western Europe. And the ancestors of the Yamnaya only formed around 4,000 BCE, and grew rapidly after 3,750 BCE. So the Caucasus Lower Volga people contributed around 4/5 of the ancestry of the Yamnaya. So the Yamnaya people were mostly descended from these Caucasus Lower Volga people who lived in the Caucasus region between the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea. And it says 4/5 of the ancestry of the Yamnaya, and entering Anatolia, probably from the east, at least 1/10 of the ancestry of Bronze Age Central Anatolians who spoke Hittite. We therefore propose that the final unity of the speakers of Proto-Indo-Anatolian, the language ancestral to both Anatolian and Indo-European peoples, occurred in the Caucasus Lower Volga people, sometime between 4,400 BCE and 4,000 BCE. That is 6,000 years ago when the lightning begins. So it is this group. When you see 4,000 BCE, that's 6,000 years ago. And it is this 6,000 years ago when the lightning begins. It is this group right here, descended from the Caucasus Lower Volga people, the Yamnayas, who bring the SLC gene mutations and spread them into Western Europe, descended from Levantine farmers from that agricultural diet, causing a deficiency in vitamin D. Next slide, please. And that is called the vitamin D hypothesis, by the way, meaning there is another hypothesis that could also explain it. So here's an example of how the light skin genes spread through West Eurasia. We explained Europe in the verbiage. Here's a graphic that shows the expansion from the Levant, down from the Caucasus region, Anatolia region. 6,000 BCE is when this process is starting. 6,000 BCE is when white people are emerging on the planet, right? 4,000 BCE They start to inhabit some of the Transjordan area, a little lower in the Levant. This is the Hurrian area. This is the Mitanni area. This is the Kassite area. So 4000 BCE, lighter skinned genes come mixing in. They don't take over and expel the black people. They mix in, creating a gradient. So each of these levels here within those zones still represents a gradient of skin tones. And in 2000 BCE, we see they finally reached the Mesopotamian era area. This is around the Akkadian period. So it would have been the Akkadians who would have been carrying these SLC genes, bringing them to Mesopotamia, where until this time, unmixed black basal Eurasian Sagiga black-headed people would be, which would be why Shulgi would be proclaiming in his hymn that he is the shepherd of the black-headed people, because Shulgi would have been these Akkadian types, lighter-skinned peoples, bringing the SLC gene down to Mesopotamia, proclaiming his dominance and shepherdhood over the unmixed black-headed Sagiga of Mesopotamia. This is the genetic context behind that Sumerian history. Next slide, please. And skin pigmentation is actually quantifiable and measurable through something called a reflectometer, right? A reflectometer creates a graph and a scale of melanin content. It assigns a number value to them, and it creates an index. You can see there on the right-hand side, the index of skin pigmentation, and skin pigmentation is measured in something called melanin units. Next slide, please. So all skin contains eumelanin, and it is the reflectivity of the eumelanin that is measured by the reflectometer. And you can see 25 and lower melanin units is low melanin. 25 to 50 is intermediate, low melanin. 50 to 75 melanin units is intermediate. 75 to 100 melanin units is considered high. And the difference between European skin and West African skin is about 30 to 40 melanin units, the range in between, just for an example. Next slide, please. So when we talk about the peoples of the planet, so for around 200,000 years, people like this just existed on the planet, right? And the only thing that made the facial features different from African facial features, the only thing that differentiated phenotypes was the Neanderthal introgression. I am not implying that all Africans looked alike. I am not implying that A haplogroup, B haplogroup, C haplogroup, D haplogroup, E haplogroup peoples all looked alike. No, but what I'm saying is they did share a specific Homo sapien facial feature that descends from the Jebel-Arud type peoples. And you can see the first Adam and Eve's picture here represents East Asian phenotypes, but that person also had preserved very Africoid phenotypes. So out of all of the non-African populations, we all have recognized this, that Asians, East Asians, especially indigenous populations of East Asians, have the most African phenotypes, or African look to them, looking synonymous to the Khoisan, everyone likes to say, right? So this speaks to how African the phenotypes were of the Black population that started that population there. So the Adamanese peoples, the Southern East Asian, carries the East Asian phenotypes that we see in lighter peoples, right? The female in the middle, the Dravidian, she carries the Scandinavian phenotypes. And the woman to the far right represents Anatolian farmer phenotypes. And the woman to the far right maintains the most phenotypes associated with Neanderthals. You can see how the Neanderthal was described with a robust face, where the face protrudes out, the larger, robust nose, right? So this is exactly how the Neanderthals were described in the genetic paper in part 1. So what differentiated the phenotypes was Neanderthal introgression, and the Neanderthals introducing their Eurasian phenotypes into these African descended basal Eurasians. But when you lighten up these dark-skinned peoples that carry these phenotypes, next slide, Saf. So those phenotypes mixed with the SLC mutations, you can see these populations of Black people. These are the populations who become lighter and give rise to individuals that we now call Scandinavians, that we would now associate with Anatolian farmers, peoples like Armenian type peoples and those of that sort. So we can trace back the ancestral Black populations that carry the phenotypes, who would then become lighter through these SLC skin pigmentations, giving us the modern populations of who we call white people or Indo-Europeans today. And like I pointed out with the Adamanese, even when you include the Australo-Melanesians, it is the Adamanese and the Australo-Melanesians whose genes become lighter through the MFS D12 gene that gives you Asiatic types, Bruce Lee types, Jackie Chan types. Those phenotypes, meaning facial morphology, the facial features, were carried by Adamanese people and Australo-Melanesians. So it is the Dravidians and Dravidian-looking types who give rise to the later Indo-European-looking peoples that we call white people. Next slide, please. So talking about these peoples of India, the Dravidians, it seems certain that classical historians and geographers called the whole region from India to Egypt, both countries inclusively, by the name of Ethiopia. And in consequence, they regarded all the dark-skinned and Black peoples who inhabited it as Ethiopians. Mention is made of Eastern and Western Ethiopians, and it is probable that the Easterners were Asiatics and the Westerners Africans. And this is from Introduction to African Civilization by John G. Jackson, with an introduction by Dr. John Henry Clark, the illustrious John Henry Clark, and a foreword by Runoko Rashidi. Next slide, please. And it says, according to Homer and Herodotus, the inhabitants of the following territories were Ethiopians: the Sudan, Egypt, Arabia, Palestine, Western Asia, and India. And in this story about the migration of humans, the Baso-Eurasians, the haplogroup diversification, what these people look like, these are all of the exact places that have been mentioned throughout the entire presentation. And you can find this cited in A History of Ethiopia, Volume 1, page 1 and 2 by Sir E.A. Wallace Budge. Next slide, please. So again, from Runoko Rashidi himself, the Greeks and Romans called the Cushites Ethiopians and were at least somewhat cognizant of their vast domains. Early observers such as Ephorus expressly stated that the Ethiopians occupied all the southern coasts of both Asia and Africa. These are exactly those Adamanese and Melanesian peoples we've been talking about, the Australo-Melanesians. Homer described the Ethiopians as divided and dwelling at the ends of the earth. Yeah, because Black people could be found all the way from Japan to Africa. So it says, towards the settling and rising sun. Strabo adds that Greeks designated the whole southern countries towards the ocean on the coast of both Asia and Africa as Ethiopians. So this is completely describing the C haplogroup, D haplogroup peoples, the Baso-Eurasians that took the southern route through Arabia, through India, into Australia and Melanesia. The same peoples we've been talking about since part 1 of this presentation. Next slide, please. And going back to Yap signatures of an African Middle Eastern migration into North India, Y chromosome markers have suggested that present-day North Indians are mostly Indo-Europeans, right? Who have migrated from West Asia via the Fertile Crescent of Middle East Asia and entered India through the western corridor of the Indus Valley. So the Northern Indians, the lighter-skinned Indians, the Brahmins, they are migrants. They are Indo-European peoples, right? So these individuals populated most of northern, central, and western India, pushing the Proto-Asian, right? These are the early Asian Dravidian inhabitants towards the south, 4,000 to 3,000 years before present. The Proto-Asian Dravidians were ascendants of the Elamites, inhabitants of Elam, southwestern Iran, and speakers of the Proto-Elamo-Dravidian languages. And you can look at the work of David McAlpin in his work, The Elamo-Dravidian Hypothesis, And genetic evidence such as this and other phylogenetic papers have confirmed, right, the Dravidian ancestry of the Elamites, which this phylogenetic paper also confirms. But I also want to point out here that those Indo-European speakers pushed the Dravidians farther north. So the Dravidians are relegated to the southern parts of India, but they were once all over India and specifically in the north. Next slide. So here's an image of some of those Dravidians, and it says this is from genetic imprints of Pleistocene origin of Indian populations, a comprehensive phylographic sketch of India, Indian Y chromosomes. Next slide. So it says chromosome lineages, their diversity and distribution pattern, our data suggests an early Pleistocene settlement of South Asia by Dravidian speaking South Indian populations. So India was first settled by these Dravidian peoples, by these black peoples. The Austroasiatic speakers migrated much later from Southeast Asia and probably contributed only paternal lineages while amalgamating with the Aboriginal populations of the region. So in the first genetic study, the YAP signature study, that shows that Indo-Europeans were not the original peoples of India. The Dravidians were. Then this genetic study shows that the Austroasiatic speakers from Southeast Asia, they were not the original inhabitants of India. The Dravidians were. So the two other populations and candidates were knocked out the box with these genetic studies. Two genetic studies honing in on the one population of Dravidian speakers who were the original inhabitants of India. This is important. Next slide. So back to YAP signatures of an African Middle Eastern migration. India has experienced various migrational events, invasions, and massive gene flow from Central Asia, South China, and Southeast Asia. In particular, migrations of the Indo-Aryan speakers, those are Indo-Europeans, from the steppes of Central Asia who settled in the Indus Valley 4,000 years ago. Migration of Indo-Aryan speakers led to the southward retreat of Dravidians in India. Next slide. So when these people invaded, they most definitely pushed the Dravidians to the south, where they are now relegated to, right? The premier Dravidian populations are the Tamil people. Their area is called Tamil Nadu, but you also have individuals like the Telugu, the Tulu, the Malayalam, the Kannada, and you can see all the way up top in northern India, that green, all the way to the top left, you have the Brahui people. The location of that language family is very important. Remember, the Dravidians used to be all the way up in the north. So that Brahui is a remnant of original territories where the Dravidians inhabited. Where is that located, though? Right in the Indus Valley. Next slide. So it says the total lineage diversity and distribution of India-specific Y chromosome haplogroups is HLC. That's the same C that are of the Australians, the Melanesians, and the Aurignacian peoples of Europe. You have R1A1, that's the steppe ancestry, and R2, more steppe ancestry. In different geographical and socio-linguistic layers of the Indian population, that's the caste system. So within the caste system, you can see the stratification of these different haplogroups and which haplogroup and ethnic group inhabits which stratum. So the Brahmins at the top of their racial caste system, we know would be R1A1 and R2. That's what's being stated here. This theory also gathers adequate evidence from the presence of the coastal marker RPS4Y in the southern Indian tribes, who probably represent remnants of the modern human migration out of Africa that took the southern route to Australia. It's exactly what I just mentioned. Any possibility that Austroasiatic speakers could have dispersed from India, meaning them being the original population, is also eliminated based on the differential distribution of O2A Y chromosomes in southern China and India, and the complete absence of East Asian specific maternal DNA lineages in Austroasiatic and Dravidian speakers in India. So the distribution of that O2 East Asian haplogroup, and the fact that the female haplogroup associated with that is not present, shows that this was not a reproducing indigenous population. These were males migrating in. The Austroasiatics were males invading. Next slide. So this is from New Binary Polymorphisms, Reshape and Increase Resolution of the Human Y Chromosome Haplogroup Tree. Next slide. It says that clade F, a total of 25 mutations define the lineage leading to the FT clade. For additional subclades, F1, F2, F3, and F4 were found to have the derived state at P14, and the ancestral state at mutations that define the GT lineages. So this is the F haplogroup and the G haplogroup. So FP91 and FP254 chromosomes we found in Sri Lanka, right? That's southern India, or the island off the coast of southern India. FM427 and MF428 chromosomes were present in East Asia, and a single individual with the FP96 chromosome was observed in the Netherlands. Paragroup F, which is a basal lineage of the F haplogroup, was observed primarily on the Indian subcontinent at low or moderate frequencies. Next slide. So the F haplogroup and the G haplogroup are both associated with the Indian subcontinent and Indian populations. Haplogroup H is defined by the derived state of a single marker M69 within H. There is an unmarked paragroup H and 9 additional lineages marked by 11 mutations. Subclades H include H1, H2, and the geographic distribution of haplogroup H is almost entirely restricted to the Indian subcontinent. So I know these are getting a little wordy and a little technical with the mutations, but what the main points here is that these are relegated to India. The F haplogroup, which stems off of the CF haplogroup. So the F haplogroup is the sister haplogroup to haplogroup C, which is why you're going to see affinities between the peoples of India and the Aurignacian peoples and that Australian migration. And the H haplogroup is also of the Indian subcontinent, indicative of these Dravidian peoples. Next slide. So this is from a Bayesian phylogenetic study of the Dravidian language, right? So now we have to do the phylogenetic study correlating with the languages. And you can see groups like the Telugu and Koya are grouped together. The Gondi are by themselves. The Tamil, like I said, the premier Dravidian group, that's who's making all of the Bollywood movies like Bahubali and RRR and things like that. Those are Tamil people. But the Tulu, the Malayalam, the Kannada, the Tola all fall also in that Dravidian language group. Next slide. So the importance of identifying the Dravidian language, the importance why we did that is to lead to this study here, which is a Dravidian solution to the Indus script problem. So the reason why I've been pointing out how the Dravidians were in the north so much and got pushed south, and they were originally in the north, and look, Brahui, the Dravidian language, is in the Indus Valley. It's because of this reality that it was the Dravidians who started the Indus Valley civilization, and the rapid desertion of the Indus Valley civilization was due to those incoming Indo-Aryan, Indo-European peoples. Next slide. So it's talking about, there's a fair number of consistent rebus interpretations which interlock with each other and with external linguistic and cultural data to an extent that excludes chance coincidences. These readings have been achieved with the strictly adhered methodology, which is in full agreement with the history of writing methods of decipherment and historical linguistics, including the comparative study of Dravidian languages. That's why I referenced the Bayesian phylogenetic study of the Dravidian languages. The readings are based on reasonable identifications of signs, pictorial shapes. Moreover, the results make good sense in the framework of ancient Indian cultural history. and the Harappan context, and they keep within narrow limits. Fertility cults connected with the figure tree of central Hindu myth, the associated with astronomy and time reckoning, and chief deities of Hindu and Old Tamil religion. For all these reasons, I am confident that an opening to the secrets of the Indus script has been achieved. So the opening to the secrets of the script have been achieved, right? We know that the underlying language was Proto-Dravidian. So when you look at the Indus Valley script and the Indus Valley, and they talk about how that civilization is possibly older than Sumer, possibly older than Kemet, it is of these Proto-Dravidian peoples that the Indus Valley arises from. So the confirmed interpretations and their wider context provides a lot of clues for progress. Next slide. Here's an example of the Indus Valley script and seals that were used to decipher the Indus Valley script, to come to the conclusion that this script, the language that's being spelled out in this script, is the Dravidian language. Next slide, please. And the principal native deity of the Old Tamil pantheon is a youthful god of war and love, in many respects resembling the North Indian war god Skanda, and early on explicitly identified with him. This god has various native Dravidian names, but the most important is Maruku or Marukan, which means youth, young man. Sakanda's Vedic predecessor, Rudra, is represented as a newborn baby and called in Sanskrit Kumara, young boy, young man, an exact synonym for Marukan. Next slide. And it is this Marukan that Dr. Clyde Winters also cites as a cultural connection to the Dravidians and East Africa. So it says from the YAP signature phylogenetic paper, India has experienced various migration events, invasions, and massive genes flows from Central Asia. I had read this already. So this was just reiterating that, again, these peoples were pushed south, right? So the Indus Valley peoples, they were Dravidians, and it was around the time of the Indo-Aryan invasion that the Harappan and Mohenjo-Daro civilization went into decline and was abandoned. Next slide. So the migrations, again, of these peoples stem from the C haplogroup migration that I had pointed out in part 1 of this presentation, taking that southern route through southern India, through southern Iran, into India, and into Southeast Asia, and then Melanesia, which correlates again with the mitochondrial M haplogroup migration that comes out of East Africa through southern Arabia. All of this is basal Eurasian territory in southern Arabia, then through southern Iran into India, Southeast Asia, and then Melanesia. Next slide. So we're getting into the home stretch of this, y'all. So this is the spice route. And if you look at the Indian Ocean travel path of the spice route, that also completely correlates with the C haplogroup migration, that southern route that peoples took through India to Australia that was mentioned. The M haplogroup, where peoples took that southern route through South Arabia, through South India, to Australia. So when you have this migration of the C haplogroup from East Africa through Southern Arabia, through India to Australia, then you have the M haplogroup that stems out of East Africa through India, through Southern Arabia, down into Australia. And then you have the spice route that connects East Africa through Southern Arabia, through India, into Australia. So the anthropological and sociological mind and brain of me, right, is looking at this and making these connections that you also have this trade network that, even though it came up tens of thousands of years later, still represents and is analogous to, an analogy for, the migration pattern of this Black basal Eurasian family, this Black Eurasian family that we've been talking about the whole time. So the migration patterns, almost as if a trade network or a supply line had been maintained sociologically and socially in the people. You may not find this published anywhere. I'm saying my sociological brain is putting these things together, that the spice route and its distribution completely correlates with a supply chain or the definite migration pattern of the Southern Black Asiatic population. And we're going to hone in now on where that circle is in Melanesia and Australia for the duration of the presentation. Next slide, please. So this is Micronesia, Polynesia, Melanesia, right? All off of the eastern coast of Australia. You see New Zealand over there. And this is who we're going to speak about next, right? Lastly, we've been talking about Australo-Melanesians this whole presentation, ever since presentation 1, talking about the first Aurignacian Paleolithic Europeans. We've been mentioning these people of Australia. Dr. Tishkoff, talking about the SLC genes, mentions these Australo-Melanesians. So let's get into it a little bit. Next slide. So the Melanesians and the people of Oceania, MP256 is the most frequently occurring Y chromosome haplogroup in West Papua and Western Papua New Guinea. In addition, MP256 is also found in neighboring parts of Melanesia, Indonesia, and indigenous Australians. So it's not just the C haplogroup, it's the M haplogroup as well, and that's specific to Melanesians. SM230 is commonly found among populations of the highlands of Papua New Guinea. It is also found at lower frequencies in adjacent parts of Indonesia and Melanesia. So the M haplogroup, the S haplogroup, and as we're going to see, the C haplogroup is associated with Melanesia, Australia, and Oceania. Next slide. And this is from New Binary Polymorphisms, Reshape and Increase Resolution of the Human Y Chromosome Haplogroup Tree. Next slide. We get the reading that a total of 30 mutations mark lineages within haplogroup C, which is defined by 5 mutations. And haplogroup C now contains 19 branches with 29 internal markers. This represents an increase in branches, in 16 markers, 3 defining and 13 internal, associated with this haplogroup since 2002. Haplogroup C still has not been detected in sub-Saharan African populations, suggesting an Asian origin after anatomically modern humans migrated out of Africa. The ancestral paragroup of haplogroup C, as well as many downstream lineages, are commonly found among Asians, Australian, and Oceanic populations. So it says, recently, a sublineage of haplogroup C was found to be restricted to Native American populations, while branch C4 or CM374 was observed only in Australia. So when we talk about haplogroup C, again, it is majorly found in Australia. Some clades of haplogroup C are only found in Australia. And aside from that, the haplogroup C, some subclades are only restricted to Native Americans. Haplogroup C3b was found to be restricted to Native Americans. So when you talk about the basal lineages of the Americas, the Aboriginal lineages of America, the C haplogroup is that haplogroup you need to be connecting to. So next slide, please. Clade M, a newly discovered mutation P256 combined lineage M with 2 K haplogroups. So haplogroup M and haplogroup K have affinity. And the new haplogroup N contains 19 internal mutations. The lineage M1, previously known as haplogroup N, is defined by 7 mutations. And in addition to paragroup M1, there are 7 lineages defined by 7 mutations within the M1 branch. The M2 branch is marked by the presence of mutations M353 and M387. The M3 branch is defined by mutations P117 and P118. The geographic distribution of haplogroup M is restricted to near and remote Oceania and eastern Indonesia. The majority of males from Papua New Guinea and Melanesia carry haplogroup M chromosomes. Next slide. So this is matrilineality and the Melanesian origin of Polynesian Y chromosomes. So what we're pointing out is the firstness of the Melanesians. The reason why I identified all of these populations, one is because that's what the phylogenetic haplogroup tree just brings up when you study phylogenetics. But also, what I want to point out is that these individuals that I've pointed out are the basal or root populations of each area that they are in, meaning all of the non-Black populations of these areas are descended from these Black populations that I am talking about and expounding upon with these haplogroups. So it says, recently, however, Kaiser and others have shown a Melanesian origin of Polynesian Y chromosomes, favoring a slow boat to Polynesia model with substantial population interaction and components in relation to indigenous non-Australian populations in Melanesia. Our hypothesis is that the predominance of maternally transmitted mtDNA of Asian origin and the significant presence of paternally transmitted Y chromosomes of Melanesian origin in Polynesian ancestry can be accounted for as an effect of matrilocal residence and matrilineal descent in Proto-Oceanic societies. So these Melanesians were matrilocal, right? They were matrifocal. And it is this matrilineality that leads to expressions or patterns in the genes that help these geneticists identify that Melanesians were the root population and ancestors of the Polynesians today. Next slide. So, for present purposes, matrilineal descent groups are lineages or clans in which membership is traced exclusively through female links to a founding ancestor. In matrilocal residence or married couple lives, a married couple lives with or near the female matrilineal kinsman of the wife. So you are being absorbed into your wife's family. In a matrilineal chiefdom, as hypothesized for Proto-Oceanic society, a man is succeeded by his sister's son. In a patrilineal descent group, man so that continues on. But that matrilineal aspect where a man is succeeded by his sister's son, that was practiced in a lot of African and Aboriginal groups, melanated Aboriginal groups. In Africa, a lot we see this. This is why the pharaohs would marry their sister, because they lived in a matrilocal society where automatically the pharaoh, regardless of who he married, he would be succeeded by his sister's son. Even though he might not have married his sister, say he marries someone outside of his family, he has children, he would be succeeded by his sister's son. So for a man to ensure that his son would rise to the throne, he would have to marry his sister, because off the rip, her son is going to be put on the throne. So if I want my son to be put on the throne, my sister's son and my son have to be the same person. And this was the driving factor behind marriages between siblings. Next slide. So it says Kaiser and others conclude that the Y chromosome data that express the express train model should be replaced by a slow boat model. So at first they thought Polynesians took an express train through Melanesia and they didn't pick up many Melanesian genetics. What has been shown is that needs to be replaced by the slow boat model, in which the Austronesian speaking ancestors of the Polynesian moved slowly across Melanesia, mixing extensively. In the express train model, there was little mixing. In this slow boat model, the slow boat model has been proposed because the genetics have shown that there was mixing extensively with indigenous non-Austronesian speaking Papuan populations, leaving behind their genes and incorporating many Melanesian non-Austronesian genes. Next slide. The evidence for matrilineal descent in Proto-Oceanic societies has presented in Hague, 1998, can be summarized briefly. Linguistically, Proto-Oceanic kinship terminology was bifurcate, merging in type, bifurcate, with one term for father and father's brother, tama, and a separate term for mother's brother, matuka. right? So you can see that they're putting a focus and differentiating what's coming through the mother's lineage. So the father's brother and the mother's brother get two different terms. It's not just uncle, because the mother's brother and that matrilocal lineage was more important. Next slide. So, which brings us to the work of Thor Heyerdahl and his work Kon-Tiki. So I want to bring you guys back to how the C haplogroup was a major Australian and Melanesian haplogroup, as well as found in India, right? So the peoples of India, Melanesia, Australia, they are of the C haplogroup. It's the major Aboriginal Australian haplogroup. But again, I want you guys to recall that the C haplogroup was also the basal haplogroup found in the Americas. We're not going to skip past that. And this is where FBA is in big trouble. FBA is in big trouble. So not only with the work of Thor Heyerdahl and his work Kon-Tiki, showing the cultural parallels between Melanesian, Australasian peoples and Native American populations, things like the sweet potato and the yam, the word for it, the use of it, and things like that. Next slide. So Thor Heyerdahl points out this connection between the Aboriginal Americans and Australians and Melanesians. Next slide, Sal. So the genetic evidence for two founding populations in the Americas, right? This was published final edit form in the Journal of Nature, 2015, September 3rd. And it says the genetic evidence for two founding populations of the Americas. Next slide. Genetic studies have been consistent with a single common origin of Native American groups in Central and South America. However, some morphological studies have suggested a more complex picture, whereby the Northeast Asian affinities of present-day Native Americans contrast with a distinctive morphology seen in some of the earliest American skeletons, meaning those Plains Indians, they're not matching up with the early American skeletons. So FBA, the Aboriginal movement, is 100% correct when they say that the Plains Indians represent a different population of the older American populations, which share traits with present-day Australians. So the earliest American skeletons share traits with present-day Australians, indigenous groups of Australia, Melanesia, and islands of Southeast Asia, like the Jarawa, like the Andamanese people, like the peoples associated with the Aurignacians. So like I said in presentation 1, the Aurignacians of Europe, the Paleolithic Europeans, the Aboriginal Australians, and the Aboriginal Americans are part of one superfamily that genetically can be described by the C haplogroup. Here we analyze genome-wide data to show that some Amazonian Native Americans descend partly from a Native American founding population that carried ancestry more closely related to indigenous Australians. When you hear FBA talk, when you hear Aboriginal Americans talk, these Choctaw, Cherokee, Blackfoot, Seminole peoples, do they ever mention Australia? No. Do they ever mention Melanesia? No. Do they ever mention the C haplogroup? No. But this is what all the science says. This is what all the evidence says. This is what all the measurable, quantifiable data says. So how come FBA never mentions Melanesians, Australians, and the sort, and the C haplogroup? Y'all are in big trouble with this. New Guinea and Andaman Islanders, just like I said, than to any other present-day Eurasian or Native Americans. So the early Aboriginal Native Americans are more closely related to the Australians than they are to other Native Americans. This signature is not present in the same extent or at all in present-day Northern and Central Americans, or a 12,600-year-old Clovis genome, suggesting a more diverse set of founding populations of the Americas than presently accepted. Next slide, please. So it says, of their ancestry to more recent waves of migration, ancient genomic evidence has shown that this so-called first American ancestry is present in an individual associated with Clovis technology from North America dating to 12,600 years ago. And mitochondrial DNA has suggested that it was also present by 13,000 to 14,500 years ago. In contrast, some morphological analysis of early skeletons in the Americas have suggested that characteristics of some Pleistocene and early Holocene skeletons fall outside the variation, of present-day Native Americans, and instead within the variation of present-day indigenous Australians, Melanesians, and so-called Negrito groups of Southeast Asia. That's the C haplogroup, D haplogroup, and M haplogroup, right? And some sub-Saharan African groups. So this morphology has been hypothesized to reflect an initial Paleo-American pioneer colonization of the Americas, which according to some interpretations was largely replaced by populations with Northeast Asian affinities in the early Holocene, but may have persisted in some locations. Next slide. So the Americas was inhabited, colonized, and populated by carriers of the C haplogroup. And right here again, from new binary polymorphisms, reshape and increased resolution of the Y chromosomal haplogroup tree. Recently, a sublineage of haplogroup C, being C3b, was found to be restricted to Native American populations. So the only place you're going to find this C3b is in Native American populations, while branch C4 was observed only in Australia. So it is the C haplogroup that is linking the Aboriginal Australian population to the Aboriginal American population. And to be Aboriginal American is to be descended from Aboriginal Australian. You are not from here. You are from Africa. And the original Aboriginal Americans were from Melanesia and Australia. Next slide, please. And here is some physical cultural continuity. On the left, you see an Australian man playing the didgeridoo. And on the right, you see the Aztec Maya era paintings that a lot of the FBA people use to show blackness in the Americas, but which blackness? Because you can see that the Maya Aztec peoples here are playing the didgeridoo, the very same didgeridoo that was played in Australia, the very same didgeridoo that was brought with them from Australia and Melanesia. So this right here, I want you guys to end on. This is the crescendo of the presentation, right? We've gone through the phylogenetic tree, the phenotypes, the craniometrics to show the founders of all human populations were Black people, melanated peoples. But also I want FBA to really digest this aspect, right? That the Aboriginal Americans are not autochthonous. They are not from the soil of the Americas. They are migrants, right? And both sets of migrants, the ones that came over the Bering Strait and these Melanesian Polynesians, have relations to C haplogroup. They are descendants of the Black populations of Asia and are related to the basal mulatto Aurignacian C haplogroup peoples of Paleolithic Europe. So this concludes the presentation right here. I love this imagery, this comparison right here. Shout out to my brother Yogi on this one. He's the one that gave me that picture of the Aboriginal Australian. So shout out to him. And we could open up the floor to questions and answers. So thank you, Sa, for the production here. And let's see what the people think. We got about an hour.
Nah, we got about about an hour. Anyway, we're gonna open up the lines, y'all. This is time, man. It's time for y'all to come on in.
Yeah,
what's up, Apostle?
What you mean, what's up?
Man, everybody hear you. Do you have a question? Do you have any critique? What's up?
I got a few questions.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Let's go.
All right. I didn't even know I was in. I'm just looking at the thing, man. I didn't even know I was. That you had pulled me up already. But I got a great laugh out of that last cut.
A laugh? Why did you get the laugh out of it?
Ain't you Seneca? Native? Aborigines? Family member?
So that's why you get them.
They got to laugh out of that last cut against the Aboriginal Americans. I was cutting the Aboriginals up. I ain't gonna lie.
Did you know that that your Aborigines family came from Australia and Americas?
I know now.
Yeah.
He said, "I know now."
I
know now, bro.
That's right. Now look. The end of my presentation. Oh, my fault, Apostle.
Nah, cool, man. Because really, I thought the beginning, man, I was having fun with you.
Well, Apostle, you're a Portuguese, so you should be laughing at that.
You got just as much Portuguese in your blood.
No, you got what?
No. You
That's hilarious.
got more Portuguese directly in your bloodline. Seen it.
That's not true, brother.
And my Portuguese come right out M78, M26, a lost connection with E1B1A because my people migrated out of Africa into the Iberian Strait, from Israel into Rome, down into Spain, and then into Portuguese. That was the way of the migration.
All right. Do you have any questions, brother?
Yeah, man. I mean, I got a few.
Let's go.
First of all, I want to know what do you think the Bible teaches about Ham, and Japheth?
What did you say about Ham, Shem, and Japheth?
What is your impression of the Bible? And you know they had the same mother and father, right?
Yeah,
so that doesn't accurately describe the diversification of humans genetically or through migration patterns. So to say that Ham, Shem, and Japheth are descended from one man, and then Ham, Shem, and Japheth spread out, and all human populations are descended from single people, that's not an accurate description of the reality of how human populations work, right? So I think this completely dismantles the myth of Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Yeah. You can use that story to create metaphors to loosely correlate or syncretize the biblical story with genetics. You could always syncretize, but that doesn't mean that genetics is accurately describing your story.
No,
yes, brother Zion.
Apostle, he's dealing with real history, Apostle. No comic books, not no make-believe stuff. This is real information that he's dealing with, brother.
I gotta say something, Si.
Can I talk to this guy without you interfering?
Talk. I'm always interfere. You know this man.
I want to talk to this guy.
Well, talk to him.
So
I'm trying to tell you, you're trying to put make-believe stuff with real stuff. That's not going to work.
No, that is just as make-believe. He did something over 260-something thousand years. Carbon dating cannot be trusted beyond 50,000 years. We know that. But he didn't mention that in his episode.
Can I respond to that? Can I respond? Thank you for pointing that out, Apostle. This because you provided the space for me to give more details on the Jebel Erud findings, which were the oldest human remains found in Morocco, dating from 300,000 years ago, and they used electron spin resonance. They didn't use carbon dating. They used electron spin resonance, meaning they analyzed subatomic particles to date the Jebel Erud findings. So thank you for pointing out that carbon dating wouldn't have got the job done.
In your presentation. So I can only respond to what's in your presentation. Right? So
I agree. I agree.
Hold on, everybody. Hold on. Naphtali, if you have a question, you're welcome to hit the channel and ask brother.
That up.
And then we got
tell her that we're not doing the show tonight. I was gonna contact you right now. We're not doing it because sa.neter's
Naphtali, can we do it tomorrow? Because it is a little late. Can we do the show tomorrow? Are you free tomorrow, Naphtali?
But she can come in right now.
Yeah, you can come in right now and ask the brother a question. All right. So you finished, Apostle? You done?
I'm
I
just gonna
see
go
her.
ahead
I
on.
see her question. I see her question, and the answer to her question. The answer to her question in the comment is 80,000 to 50,000 years ago when she said, when did humans start populating the earth? That means the literal basal Eurasian movement out of Africa, which dates between 80,000 and 50,000 years ago, specifically.
All right. You can come.
Okay, I wanted to get a question in here if I can, really quickly. sa.neter, if you can, before you go around.
Go ahead.
All right, great. Okay, thank you for letting me do this. And that was a very interesting presentation, God Energy. I wondered about that information that you're using. I just wonder, well, there's a lot of stuff. First off, you are dispelling the whole, how they say, well, white people were the first. But I have two questions. Are you saying that it is our people, like Black people, so-called people of Africa, or are you just saying that it's basically the melaninated skin phenotype? Because we didn't hear very much about hair, right? So that's my first question. Then I have another
What did
question.
you say? What do you mean by it's? The way the question was asked was a little vague to me. So can you ask it in a more specific way? I don't know what you mean by it's when you say it's Black people or it's this. What do you mean by it's?
Well, okay, let me say clearly. The information you're presenting, scientifically, it's found that yes, which we knew that Black people of dark melaninated skin tone or melanin people that are dark, we know that obviously they're the first people. But when we talk about dark skinned people, are you saying, oh, look, we're superior to people who are not dark skinned? I mean, what's your angle with the whole, what you're teaching? That's my first question.
That is a very great question, and I feel like that maybe has been behind some of the motives or the energy of how some people have approached me, because I'm not making that claim at all. I'm literally presenting the out of Africa science based off of all of the phylogenetic, paleogenomic, archaeogenetic research, and some of our own scholars like John G. Jackson, John Henry Clark, and Ranoka Rashidi, who have touched on this topic accurately even before the genetic studies came out. So I am literally, hopefully, giving people the definitive guide on the science and explanation of out of Africa without any of that rhetoric or trying to make a point about skin color or superiority or ethnic hierarchy. I kind of wanted to do this so people can get the accurate information without any of that stuff clouding the conversation. Because the same way it clouded the conversation when the racist, anthropologists, eugenicists were doing it, it would cloud the conversation now. So all of this visual of seeing so many Black people, I put up so many pictures of you having to look at Black people. It might make you think I'm implying something, but that's just how Black the Homo sapien family is. And that's how much history and time passed before non-Black individuals came about on the planet. So I'm not making any statement about superiority or anything like that. I'm just literally showing how, yes, the genetic evidence says we were first. That's it. And there's nothing to being first or second. That's just a happenstance. So I'm not making any type of claim of, you know what I mean? I'm not on no BS. This is pure science.
What do you mean?
Okay,
what does it mean? What do you mean by first?
Excuse me, just a second, please. So with that said, I kind of asked about the hair, but okay, what about the angle where we talk about evolution, and then there is an advantage to those who, in your teachings, you could say that people who are not so-called Black or dark, they've evolved, they're more lactose tolerant, they are more resistant to HIV, they're more resistant to malaria. So then they would be able to use with your teachings, oh, we're more superior because look, we can survive more than they can. So you get what I'm saying? Like when you come in, which I'm very thankful that you're teaching this information because people need to be informed. However, it's a slippery slope especially if you're using scientific information that has been used in scientific racism in the past. They can use it and say, yeah, so even Black people are saying that we evolved from them. So we're more evolved, we're stronger, we're more resistant to certain diseases. And then I would like for you to also go back to the hair part, because even though you're talking about skin color, what about the Chinchorro people who are 10,000 years old in Chile, and they have straight hair, bone straight hair? So is it just that we're happy that we have dark skin and we know that already, or what's the point here?
Can I respond?
I'm really going to read it.
Can I respond?
Yeah, really talk about the evolution part, how your research would say your research would say, I'm going to park my car. Your research definitely would say, and science says, white people are more resistant to HIV and malaria. White people can tolerate lactose better than we can. So, yeah.
That doesn't equate to superiority, because if you take an academic decathlon, drinking milk is not part of the academic decathlon. When you write a thesis, drinking milk is not part of writing a thesis. When you do mineralogy, pharmacology, drinking milk has nothing to do with it. So one people's being able to process milk over another speaks nothing to superiority. And I don't think any white person would try to flex on us by saying, we can drink milk.
I'm going to the next
don't.
But can I? Yeah, I just want to respond with that. But I know that our people have a fear of this, and I addressed this in the beginning of my presentation, that we approach this from a place of weakness. And I wrote down a speech for my introduction to address exactly what you just did, Napah, because our people approach this with a fear, because you are trying to make a preemptive blockade for white people to make a supremacist statement over us. And that is the trauma that we experience. And I spoke on that in the beginning of this, and you did it exactly. So we try to shy away from this topic to preemptively stop white people from making a racist superiority statement against us in our fear of that. And that blocks us from studying the real science that has nothing to do with any of that. Because I never spoke about resistance to HIV or being able to tolerate milk as a superiority. But so that has nothing to do with anything, and that's not a flex, because Black people have genetic things that differentiate us. So difference doesn't equal superiority. So, and I want you guys to go back and listen to the beginning and introduction of this presentation, because my introduction addresses that sentiment that Napah exactly came up with. So I feel like her doing it was completely on time.
All right, let me go to God Body. God Body, let's go.
I would like to just say this before I leave. I'd like to say this before I leave. God Energy, I want to talk to the brother. What's weird? You're weird right now. God Energy, you can come over to the HOK Coliseum, because sa.neter is very nervous that I'm talking to you. You can set it up with me and I can sit and talk to you without any problem, because my thing is that I'm not nervous. I'm glad you're presenting the information. It's just there's two sides to it. And I also would like you to still address the thing about the Chinchorro people with the straight hair. So I'll set up something. You hit the panel there before and talk to you more about this, because even though you're saying it's not a flex, it can be used that people are resistant to disease. It goes both ways. When we're talking about phenotype, instead of just looking at actual people and culture and talking about evolution, that's where we get set back. And I did want to ask you, are you a follower of Dr. York, or have you ever followed him or studied him? I'm just curious.
No, not at all. I was about Dr. York too. But can I respond? I wanted to set up a
energy. We moving on. We moving forward.
Just contact me by my email. It's crazy how I could not talk to you.
We got to move on. We got a lot of people.
Moving on. But be up here talking all night.
Your arch enemy is in there talking crazy.
Okay, so listen, God Energy, bro. Listen, keep going, bro. I appreciate you, man. Hey, listen, I'm telling you, bro. I am so happy.
She's not my arch nemesis. She's nobody.
Who's that? Who's that?
It's me. It's me, Napah. It's me, Napah. sa.neter's wife. sa.neter, I'll just block her. Just block her.
All right. Yeah, go ahead, God body.
Yeah, bro. I'm telling you, God energy. I'm happy for you. Keep it going. You know what I'm saying? Rise above. You feel me? I just wanted to pop up here just to say that to you, man. I'm happy for you. You
Much
know what I'm saying?
appreciated.
I appreciate you, man, for keep on going. And just from back in the day, keep it up, bro. I appreciate
Sure.
it. And
All
Much
I'm
right.
gonna tap on,
appreciated, brother.
I'm
Thank
gonna
you.
tap on out.
Thank you, man. All right, yo, Zion, man. I always call you last. This time I'm calling you up early, brother. What's up?
All right, no, I have popped on, you know what I'm saying? Great presentation once again. That boy good. That boy
Much
good.
appreciated.
um,
Appreciate it.
I only popped on because, you know what I'm saying? Because Apostle brought up the Shinnecock, right? And so I have Shinnecock on my mother's side. I have 12% when I did my 23andMe. And the interesting thing is that in small amounts, Aborigine came up in my DNA too. So when you brought that out, it actually supported that, as well as like some small fractions of Filipino and Chinese out of somewhere, like really small fractions. So that would probably be that C that you was talking about, or you know what I'm saying? But yeah, because he tried to come at sa.neter about the Shinnecock thing, I wanted to say yes. Actually, the Aboriginal Aborigine was present in my DNA. Very
Right.
small.
Do you have a question?
No, I just wanted to say that real
All right.
quick.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Right.
All right. Moving right along. I see you, Chief. Let me get the brother first.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon,
Good
I should say.
morning. Where you at? Where you at, bro?
No, good afternoon, I should say. I misspoke.
Okay.
But it was a great presentation. This should be the standard of presentations on the House of Consciousness and sa.neter TV. Objective scientific data presented, non-slanted, nothing about religion, straight facts, empirical data. I think a lot of people try to espouse different things, but when it's backed by science, you can't argue it. I definitely love the presentation. I feel that people need to stop being so emotional. You said nothing about any superiority. You didn't imply that at all. You just presented the hard data. People can draw whatever conclusions they want from that, but based upon the science, all you did was, again, just present the data. I think what a lot of people don't realize, as humans, we are just merely animals. Our environment determines a lot of our behaviors. Genetics does as well. Our genetics are based upon our environments, and I think we have certain strengths based upon those environments. For example, us as Africans, we have higher fast twitch muscle fibers that allows us to have an advantage in quote unquote athletics. But there are certain other strengths that other populations have based upon their environment. So, and I think people also don't take into account, based upon our environments, there are certain behaviors that we have predispositions towards. And again, if you look throughout history, certain people are predisposed to more violent behaviors. Certain people aren't. So I think that we try to paint humanity with a broad brush. We have differences, we have some similarities, but people don't take into account our environment having such of an impact on how we behave.
I agree. And to speak to that, to get into the Bronze Age and the time period that a lot of us are more familiar with, the Indo-Europeans are known as being the warlike tribes, right? So when this people group comes onto the planet, as the Indo-Aryans, as the Latins, as the Hellenes, as the Celts, as the Vikings, these peoples in the historical record, in the archaeological record, in the anthropological record, these peoples are more warlike, right? They're markedly more warlike. That's why in places where they are not, this is where science, philosophy, and religion formed, right? In the non-Indo-European populations. And then when you see Indo-European populations, what is always associated with them, even to this day? War. We learn social studies and history in school through a succession of wars. As a matter of fact, the history of America and its history of wars compared to the number of years it's existed, I think is a perfect example of that statement as well. So thank you, brother, for the support. I appreciate it.
Chief X, what's up, man? What you got, man? This presentation was dedicated to you, brother.
Oh yeah.
I'm dedicating it to you. Did you see part 1?
No. The other day or not today? You talking about?
The other days, a couple of days ago.
Okay, a couple of days ago, I tuned in and listened a little bit, maybe about 10 minutes,
Yeah.
and I had to click off. It was so pseudoscientific.
All right, go ahead. You got the floor, brother.
It was wild. Now, I can't comment on this one because I didn't watch, but someone did text me because actually it's ironic. I was live at the same time you was live, sa.neter. And while I was live, somebody came into my chat and said, God Energy called you out. I'm like, oh, about what? So I'm not sure what he called me out on. I just got off a live. And ironically, my live is similar to this topic, right? It talks about the out of Africa theory. Now,
He showed a lot of sources. He showed a lot of unbeatable sources, brother. That's going to be hard to dispute.
Trickery. But let me just say this. My ancestors are West and Central Africans. West and Central Africans never, ever, ever, ever left out of Africa. Never. They've been right there and never left out of Africa. Okay? And I just finished my presentation. If you want to see my presentation I did just now, blows this out the water. So
no, it doesn't.
So North Africa has never ever been Black Africa, and I played my If you watch my presentation on Chief X channel, if you're not subscribed, you're living in the dark, okay? And I just blew this out the water. He broke down the North African DNA, ancestral North African DNA, people in the Green Sahara, the new study that came out a year ago, Takafori individual that was in the Green Sahara before it dried up. They did the DNA on that, totally North African ancestry.
Yeah, and has less Neanderthal than the Tafara Ibero-Maurutians, who also have less Neanderthal than the rest of the West Eurasians. Yeah. I'm very familiar with Takakori, Tafara. Exactly.
So yeah, they weren't Black folk. So bottom line, us, we don't have much Neanderthal DNA at all, because we never left out of the continent to admix with any Neanderthals. That's
also, Neanderthals never came into Africa.
Let me finish. So that's why we don't have no Neanderthal DNA, or very slightly have a Neanderthal DNA, because we weren't out there admixing. Our people never. People who are migrating out and back migrating are the same people in North Africa right now.
Some of them are, yes, but they are different from the Tafara and Takakori individuals. So what you might not have realized is that the Tafara individuals, they have more closeness with South African and Mbuti pygmies than the modern North African population, showing even more that they were more African peoples. This reason as well is why that the wait, hold on, don't cut me off. I didn't cut you off. This reason as well is why the Ibero-Maurutians of Tafara, North Africa, are the closest proxy for Basal Eurasians. Basal Eurasians who never mixed with Neanderthals, keeping their ancestral Basal North African lineage. And the reason why Ibero-Maurutians are the closest proxy for Basal Eurasians is because Basal Eurasians and Ibero-Maurutians both have affinity with the Basal A and B haplogroup basal clades of Africa. So these peoples were very African, and the Gobi people, they did a reconstruction of the Kiphian era Gobi people. The Kiphians, who also share affinity with the Ibero-Maurutians, the Macdoid peoples of Mali and Mauritania, the Capsian peoples of North Africa. The Gobi peoples, the reconstruction was done by the University of Chicago, showing that these peoples were Black African peoples. Those same peoples who were descendants of the Aterian ancestral North African peoples. And it's through these Aterian peoples where the Shumlaka peoples may have inherited A00 from. But that.
I'm not debating this topic right now. I was just throwing out something. So let me ask you. Let me slow down, bro. Slow down. Calm down. Now, because you said two things when you were talking. I want to know what you mean when you said this. You said African people, and then you said they were very African. What do you mean by African people, and what do you mean by very African? Just make it short real quick.
Thank you. Because I don't get into the semantics of black, African, melanated. All of that is semantics to stop a conversation from moving forward. But I'm going to be quick about this. African means sub-Saharan African. African means subnasal prognatism. African means descended from the basal A haplogroup, B haplogroup, C haplogroup, D haplogroup, or the E haplogroup, which all formed within Africa. So, and the people that carry these facial metrics. So when you measure the face, the nasal aperture, the prognathism, the brow ridge, and all types of other technical terms that I cited in my presentation that I don't remember. When you do the measurements of all of these, they produce a certain type of face as well, right? So skin color isn't always what we're talking about, even though we might use terms like black. I'm a different skin color than sa.neter, but you would call both of us black. So it's not the skin color all the time that we're really getting at. So what are we getting at? It's this nose. It's the way my jaw protrudes out. It's the fact that both of our heads are longer from the skull to occipital bund than they are from ear to ear, which they call dolichocephalic. Hold on. So when I mean African and when I mean black, I mean the range of peoples that fit those metrics. Okay. And it's just a range. So you can't pin it down and then use that one term that I use to try to make an argument out of, because it's not that simple.
Okay. So your basic answer was in short, you basically said African people are sub-Saharan African people. That's what you basically said. Because you even said the word sub-Saharan. Now,
well, can I because that term sub-Saharan doesn't apply because the North African.
You can interject, it's fine. If I want to interject, you should allow me to interject. So don't cut me off. Relax, y'all.
Okay,
you can interject. It's okay to do that, family, in the conversation. Go ahead. Did you want to say something else?
I'll actually wait till you're done and play by my own.
Get ready to move on, y'all.
Okay, let me move on. Real quick. So you don't consider Moroccan people and Algerian people to be African?
You're talking about the modern population?
The population that, let me just say it this way.
Like French Montana? You talking about French Montana?
I'm not familiar with the people, celebrities y'all are familiar with.
Sorry.
Let me clarify. The people living there today, the Berbers, the North Africans peoples, okay? Berbers have been there 30,000 years. Okay. Are Algerians, Libyans, Moroccans, Tunisians, are they African to you?
No, they would be representative of their R1 and I haplogroup ancestors that migrated in through various time periods. So it's not just Ibero-Mauritian and ancestral North African genes that can be found in these populations. Their Indo-European ancestral haplogroups are also measured when you do the genetics on Moroccans, Berbers, Algerians, and blase, and we always seem to forget that.
Okay, so what you're saying?
Hey, hold on. See facts and God energy. Y'all up to have a discussion, not a debate, a discussion tomorrow on this topic.
I work tomorrow.
What time
so
you
I
get
have
off?
to do things on my days off.
Oh, okay.
I get home at 11. Y'all be seeing me on here when I'm
Let me tell sa.neter.
I get home late.
Let me give sa.neter something real quick. Sa.neter. The Native Americans of today, the indigenous people of America, the Native Americans, they've been here 15,000 years. They're indigenous to the Americas. Okay, Berbers been in North Africa twice as long as the Native Americans been in America, but they're not indigenous Africans to him. That's wow. I'm gonna leave it at that.
No, can I add a caveat to that? And thank you, Chief. What your accurate statement should be is that the Berber culture has existed in North Africa for 30,000 years, but the individuals who are now the carriers of the Berber culture are descended from the R1, I, and J haplogroup Indo-Europeans that entered into North Africa way after the Ibero-Mauritians even came about. So that's what would make your statement more accurate. The Berber culture has been there for 30,000 years, but the people that are now calling themselves Berber have not been there for 30,000 years. Next person, please.
Hey, Issa Queen, what's up?
Hi, everybody. Peace to the panel. I want to say, like, another great presentation. Got energy like you did. Amazing. I loved it. I just wanted, I know the answer to this question, but I wanted you to kind of clarify what do you mean by the early European population, the early Asian population, when you're talking about the Paleolithic and early Neolithic times? Because I feel as if we're having a confusion on what you're talking about, even though, like, I hear a lot of Black people say, oh, the planet was once black and we inhabited all of these times. Well, this is the time, that period that we're talking about. So if you can go back to that part and just explain it for the people in the back about how black of a time this was and the spectrum of black that we're talking about, because it seems as if black is being incorporated with Africa only, or not having a Neanderthal admixture, which neither one of those things means black, at least to me.
So thank you, and I completely agree. And pointing out, and thank you for the support. I appreciate it. I hope you like the presentation. Glad you liked the presentation. The time periods that we're talking about is the initial out of Africa expansion from the basal Eurasian homeland of Arabia, right? So North Africans basically migrate to Arabia, and this is between 80,000 and 50,000 years ago. So when you talk about the time period of the Paleolithic, right, and the time period of the Stato-Pygman, the time of the Venus statues, this is between 40,000 and 10,000 years ago. This is the Paleolithic period. And you can see the basal populations all over the world all start popping up around this time because they are all descended from the same migration, which is why the Aurignacian culture of 40,000 BCE matches up with the Sungir and Kostenki findings of around 35,000 BCE in Russia, which also correlate with the Tian Yuan findings in China, represented by the D haplogroup Andamanese people, or the Hobinian culture in Southeast Asia of about 30,000 BC, right? So the reason why from the Aurignacian in Europe to the Tian Yuan in China, the reason why both of these cultures start popping up at around 40 to 35,000 BCE is because they are descended from the same out of Africa migration group. And this is the Paleolithic period. So, or the Pleistocene, right? So, because there's two terms that can represent two different time periods. The Paleolithic can also be called the Pleistocene. The Neolithic, where the Natufians are from, this is 10,000 to 6,000 BCE, or 12,000 to 6,000 BCE. This is known as the Neolithic period, where the Natufians is, but that can also be called the Holocene. Right, so you can either say Paleolithic or Neolithic, or you can either say Pleistocene and Holocene.
All right,
but it's both ways.
We got the one and only in the building. He go by the name of Silky D. Silky D. What's up, Silky D?
Oh man, y'all talking about Berbers? You talking about North Africans?
Let's
you
go.
Talking about the Amazigh? What? And you talking phylogenetic tree? Oh man, you deep in my bag. You like you about 40, 50%. You getting there. So let me help you out. So when we talk about the basal lineages, the basal lineage or the basal haploid, like he said, is A. But the people that carry that basal lineage, which is AO, are the Algerian Berbers. So that's where your AO basal lineage is coming from in the beginning of the phylogenetic tree. And after that, you get AOO. So I went through your, I just tuned in, but I went through some of your slides and I saw you speaking about the Pygmies. Now, once you get onto the Pygmies and then you try to run, I think you said something about the Bantu earlier too. Yeah, so when you're standing on the That's that the AOO.
You gotta try to take pygmy out of your vocabulary, brother. That's racist, man. Twa. Call them the twa.
Also, yeah, the Twa are one of those. You can use Central African. You can use Central African hunter gatherer instead of pygmy.
The more sources, it reads as pygmies.
Huh?
No problem. I agree. I use the term in my presentation.
Genetics, when it comes to AOO, is held by the pygmy Bantu or the pygmies.
Nah, man, that's racist, brother.
That's in genetics.
So they're associated. They're associated with the B haplogroup largely as a group, but A00 has been speculated to have come from either the Central African hunter-gatherers that we're talking about, or the North African ancestry of the Shumlaka individual who was found in West Africa, who has the oldest A00 clade. So I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you.
Right. So the Shumlaka. So that's the one. That's the Albert Perry gene, and that's the North Carolina commercial genetics. And for everybody out there at home, that's came out in 2013, I believe, or 2012. It's been debunked since 2014. Go look up the investigation on the bioinformatic AOO Albert Perry investigation and National Medical article source and whatnot like that. Yeah, all you gotta do is look up the investigation.
You're saying A00. You're saying A00 is not from America, right? Yes, or that's what you're saying, right?
No, I'm saying A0. It's a kind of like a worthless haplogroup because it's coming from a guy in North Carolina, and then they try to match it with some bodies that they dug up from 8,000 years old in Cameroon and West Africa.
I want you to notice. Notice apostle is gone, because see this right here, this type of information, he can't hang because this is not the Bible stuff. So he had to bounce. He can't hang with this. This real stuff right here. This real history. This ain't no make believe stuff here. You know, you can't pull out no Ham, Shem, and Japhet. Leave that stuff in the comic books, brother. Leave that in the comic books. Go ahead, finish, brother.
Yeah, what I was saying though to Silky is that the A00 doesn't come after A0. It was discovered after A0, but A00 on the phylogenetic tree is the basal A haplogroup lineage. And the Shumlaka person represents. The Shumlaka person represents A00A specifically, which is older on the phylogenetic tree than Albert Perry's, showing that A00 has its origin in Africa.
Hold on, Silky. One at a time. One mic, brother. Let him finish.
Let me let my plane.
You cut him off.
Yeah, what I wanted to say was that the Shumlaka represents A00A, which is the basal clade of A00, and Albert Perry's was younger than that, showing that the A00A found in Africa is older than what Albert Perry inherited from his West African ancestors. Because the only reason why Albert Perry has haplogroup A00A is because it was brought with his ancestors during the transatlantic slave trade. And that's why the Umbo people today of Cameroon still carry A00 as well.
Okay, slow. All right, bet. Well, all right, let's deal with it. But first, I just told you that they had an AOO haplogroup, had a bioinformatic investigation done on it after it was published, talking about how the numbers are all inadequate and inaccurate, and all the information was flawed on it. Like I said, all you do is look up the AOO investigation. It come right up. It's certified, and it's done by another geneticist. You know what? The AOO haplogroup literally contradicts all history. It contradicts all literature. Because what you're doing is you're trying to put the Bantu and trying to make them the origin of, you know what I'm saying, out of Africa. You're trying to, and then you're linking it with an American guy from North Carolina. And then you're trying to link that to the Cameroon. But still, that has the investigation out on it that's not accurate. That said it's flawed. So you got to throw that out.
All right, so I see where the misconception comes in, because they're not saying that the Bantu are the oldest group and they were around before everyone. And that, wait, hold on, that's not what that means. What it is the Bantu are descendants of the same North African population who were related to the Shumlaka A00 people. That's why there's a conversation if A00 got to Shumlaka through the North African ancestry or the Central African rainforest hunter-gatherers known as the Pygmy. That's what they were trying to decide. And this connection in North Africa is where the common ancestor of the Shumlaka and the Bantu have. They just have a common ancestor in North Africa. It's not saying that the Bantu are the original people.
Yeah, of course not. Well, of course not. Yeah, because the basal lineage before the O even was found, before Albert Perry stuff even was published, it was A0. And that A0 is only held by the Berber. Berbers and the Amazigh are the only people that hold that A0 haplogroup, and that's the basal lineage. Before your basal lineage even came out. And then once your basal lineage came out, they made it a subclade. So once again, that you trying to read, you can't even say the Bantu or, you know what I'm saying, the pig or whatever. The West, that's kind of flawed. If you study genetics and follow genetic tree, all you gotta do is go look it up. Now, when you're talking about the out of Africa part about the Amazigh, yes, the Berbers did leave out of Africa first. And that is why you're catching that E1B1. But you also have Berbers that have AO that carry a basal lineage. So you have Berbers carrying AO and E1B1B. And then not to mention they're on the Strait of Gibraltar and they're all across North Africa from Morocco to Egypt, Algeria, to Tunisia, Libya. Okay, all these areas. All right, that's all Berber territory. That's all linguistics, archaeology, genetics, all that. So there's really no way around to wiggle around that. You know what I'm saying? If you want to, like I said, go look
that
up.
Doesn't disagree. That completely agrees with my first presentation, brother. So you're saying that in an argumentative way, but that's exactly what I presented in my first presentation. And because me and you have a baseline knowledge of genetics, we are saying the same thing, but you feel like you have to argue with me. But if you watch my first presentation, if you watch my first presentation, that's what I said. So we're in agreement. We're in agreement on that.
You got to close out. Go ahead, Rakufu.
Okay, so God Energy and Silky. Silky, was you saying the A00, whatever the new studies came up, they showed?
No questions, brother. This is the closeout now.
Okay, well,
I can't take too long, man. I got to roll.
Okay, I'll get it out. So I thought you said that because I just looked up where it says new research keeps confirming A00 exists instead of being messed up. It says they're showing it does exist.
All right. Thank you, brother. Thank everybody, man. I appreciate y'all, man. And y'all got to come in early, man. Peace. We out.
Right. I never said it didn't exist.
Okay.
I just said the math.
That you've been told, and you need that info. sa.neter TV, sa.neter TV. Tune into consciousness and watch the last fall, then you can let the truth flow. sa.neter TV, sa.neter TV. When you feel that melanin about to explode, like you feel the wind blow, it's sa.neter TV, sa.neter TV. I know you got the truth, but you can get more, so you continue to grow. sa.neter TV, sa.neter TV.
seem like everybody watch the House of Consciousness. Got them tuning in here in the States to every conference. You got your holy book, your references and documents. Then hit your brother's side and get it cracking with the confidence. sa.neter TV, it don't get no more reality. It's helping us stay mindful of the struggle and totality. Humble yourself and let the commentary resonate. Living in these times, this here is sure to help you elevate. In a new zone. Hope the dialogue ain't too strong. Y'all know that we've been waiting too long. And ever since I stepped into this paradigm, most of the time all I got is building on my mind. On a black throne, where kings and queens come get their facts on. Just be prepared to have your mind blown. And ever since I stepped into this paradigm, most of the time all I got is freedom on my mind, for real. Peace to the Black Power family. Peace to the Black Power family.
We do it for the people. Yeah. sa.neter TV. I'm tuned in to sa.neter. Subscribe to sa.neter. I was on the couch watching sa.neter. Peace to the natures, peace to the prophets. He brought them all together, he's the Don, king of knowledge. Learning information you cannot get from a college. Never knew a day it would be cool to be conscious. I was on the topic, loving the debates. Now we got the conferences to serve another plate, so you can get your food for thought and enjoy the pleasure. Red, black, and green, I'm on the way up to the lecture. It's all for the better, knowledge is the treasure. A legend to the game, the one and only sa.neter. We do it for the fam. sa.neter Studios, like news on 2. Special shout out to the ASOP. The House of Consciousness is all the same. We do it for the people. We do it for the people. We do it for the fam. sa.neter Studios, Black News on 2. Special shout out to the ASOP. The House of Consciousness is all the same.
We do it for the people. sa.neter TV.
Yeah. Well, it's King 9 London signing in. Love, bless, and love to sa.neter universe. Yeah. You see. Middle finger to all the fools who ain't got the testicular fortitude to walk in the shoes of sa.neter. You can't do better, neter, no better. Middle finger to all the fools who ain't got the testicular fortitude to walk in the shoes of sa.neter. You can't do better, neter, no better. How dare some sissy try run at the mouth? Shut keyboard gangsters better run in the house. We're pointing you out, name and shame the exposure. Salute sa.neter who keeps his composure for the people. Son spends his time running around getting that information worth hundreds of pounds of thousands of dead presidents. Gather around, contribute to the cause and stop being a clown. He's in a hood near you with a cannon to shoot it up. True warrior, his heart don't pump no fruit punch. Red, black, and green for the information. I'm a fiend, so don't ever disrespect sa.neter, I beg you please. Humble yourself, give thanks, and come in peace. We don't have no love for agents or police. Don't watch Fox News, CNN, or BBC. sa.neter, Black News, running tears on repeat. Middle finger to all the fools who ain't got the testicular fortitude to walk in the shoes of sa.neter. You can't do better, neter, no better. Middle finger to all the fools who ain't got the testicular fortitude to walk in the shoes of sa.neter. You can't do better, neter, no better. Da 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 da.